The story opens inside the demon realm, not a battlefield, but a surprisingly serene space behind a gate, filled with peaceful scenery and scattered vegetation. A strange, snake-like creature appears, seemingly intent on devouring some plants. But these plants suddenly come to life. They're not ordinary flora, but radish-shaped beings called mandra who prepare to defend themselves. Just as tensions rise, the scene shifts unexpectedly. It was all a playful skirmish between the snake, named Sasa, and the three mandras. They've been mock-fighting like this for days, with Sasa having lost 99 times in a row. Overlooking them are two humanoid beings, one male with a hawk's head and a female watching the game with mild amusement. Nearby, a human applies moisturizer to some of the mandras, who enjoy the pampering. Meanwhile, a cheerful girl races toward a cook named Se-jun, who's preparing mouth-watering dishes using his special sauce, omelets and fried rice that make everyone around swoon in delight. The protagonist quietly watches all of this, surrounded by joy and warmth, realizing that life in the demon realm may not be so terrible after all. Flashback to the human world, one day, a gate opened to the demon realm, unleashing chaos. As monstrous invasions began, hunters awakened to protect humanity. But awakenings became rare, and the human defense began to crumble. In desperation, humanity turned to science, creating artificial life forms called chimeras, beings born from mixing human and animal DNA with monster cells and gate minerals, often using prisoners as test subjects. The result was a breakthrough. Chimeras became humanity's strongest weapon, drastically reducing casualties and helping stabilize the world. However, decades later, illegal labs began producing high-grade chimeras for the black market. In one such lab, scientists inspected a broken test subject, Chimera number 17. His arm was rotted and his brain partially damaged, making him unresponsive without direct orders. The researchers considered him a failure, fit only for disposal. The director, cold and calculating, decided to deploy number 17 on a gate-sealing mission, not to succeed, but to die there without a return order. Soon after, inside the demon realm, number 17 fought alongside a group of adventurers. But he didn't need help. He single-handedly obliterated monster after monster, using devastating powers like a spirit bomb to clear the battlefield. The adventurers were in awe, reduced to mere looters trailing behind his wake. Despite his damaged mind, number 17 showed unmatched strength and endurance. Days passed, the monsters kept coming, and yet the gate remained open. Eventually, the gate began to collapse. The adventurers prepared to retreat. One female hunter questioned whether they should bring number 17 back, given his crucial role in their survival. But the orders were clear: he was to be left behind. Her companion coldly reminded her that chimeras were emotionless tools. But number 17 had begun to understand. Even as he kept fighting, he realized no return order had come. As monsters overwhelmed him, tearing at his body, number 17 continued to defend the retreat route, fulfilling his mission to the end. Left behind and abandoned, he was ultimately destroyed. Later, the mission report revealed an astounding result. Not a single hunter died, and Chimera number 17 had defeated 1,823 monsters alone. At the moment of death, Chimera number 17 was remembering a forgotten past, which was vaguely appearing inside the Chimera's mind. He remembered, somehow, that he was once a complete human being and was abducted at the age of 9. A flood of images unfolded before his eyes, and even when the broken brain of the Chimera could not understand anything, he just watched everything silently. 80 years ago, he was born. Then, 70 years ago, he was inside an orphanage, fighting off the bullies that bullied him, and then getting punished when it was not his fault. It was then that he got out of the orphanage and tried living on his own, but it was too harsh. Some people came to abduct the little boy, chaining him and performing multiple experiments on him as a subject. Inside the illegal lab, he was chained down and given the number 17. He was administered S-class silk cocoon larva cells as the scientists waited for any reaction to appear. But even after multiple days, there were no side effects. Instead, 17 had gained special abilities. Still, his human appearance and consciousness were maintained because of his rare constitution. The scientists were happy, not ready to let go of the little boy, telling the others that they should keep transplanting cells until they saw a reaction, and could find out how much his body could take. 64 years ago, even after administering multiple monster fluids, 17 was not showing any side effects and was instead gaining multiple abilities. Cleaning floors with the monsters while using his physical and mental abilities, along with having skills that were once only special to monsters. One such day, while defeating a monster, 17 saved a lady and her daughter who thanked him for saving them. But just as he turned around, he started showing signs of forgetting the orders given to him. 59 years ago, the condition worsened, and 17 wondered about what he had just been doing. One scientist noticed that 17 was having trouble remembering things. The psychotic scientist, however, was happy because side effects had finally begun to show. 54 years ago, we see that the scientists were recording something, that after transplanting over 500 types of monster cells for over 50 years, 17 had become an S-class Chimera, and now it was impossible to measure his potential. Number 17 was the research lab's greatest success. The latest event happened 20 years ago, as 17 transformed completely and was no longer human at all, not able to understand anything that was going on, only able to complete orders and do as he was told. 3 days ago, he was defeated by the monsters who flooded the gate, completing his mission but not able to retreat. But from the fluid secreted from 17, something strange started happening. A strange light fell onto a bone, which was part of 17. We come to know that the bone started gaining strange powers as it began rematerializing itself and forming a complete body. After a transplantation of a total of 527 types of monster cells, strangely and suddenly, 17 has been resurrected. His whole body is coming back and rebuilding itself slowly but surely, and he is turning back into a human, coming full circle. 17 was shocked, wondering if he had completely turned back into a human. But as he started using his monster abilities, they were not completely gone, and he realized that he was not entirely human, but instead had just regained the appearance of one. However, 17's brain was no longer broken, and he realized that quite some time had passed, and the research lab had not retrieved him. He knew that he was finally discarded. The experiment number on his wrist was gone too. The boy realized that now he no longer had ties with the lab. Then 17 remembered something. He had been injected with the abilities of an immortal-type monster, which was a monster phoenix. And as the core was not destroyed, the monster could revive up to 3 times. Even when 17 had thought that humans could not fuse with immortal cells, he had been wrong, and he was now certain that his body had been returned to its prime. He wondered if it was because all the side effects of the experiments had been eliminated that he was feeling great. Ever since it all began, he had felt like a fog was completely shrouding his mind. But now, all the spells that the scientists had put in place to prevent 17 from escaping or causing any resistance were gone. It was as if his life as number 17 was now over, and he could live as a human. It was then that 17 started remembering what his actual name was, because 17 was just a number assigned by the lab. He remembered that one really gentle scientist had given him a name, Ryuk, who was ready to help 1,000 people with his new abilities. Ryuk just smiled, wondering how a homeless orphan from the slums could help others. But now that he had abilities, it was possible. Ryuk wondered what he should do now that he had been resurrected. At first, he thought about revenge. But revenge only made sense if the target was right in front of him, and that was not the case. Ryuk had once thought about revenge, but now the events were so far in the past that his desire for it wasn't as intense as before. And as he had no way to enter the human world, he knew that if he lived long enough, he would probably run into them. So he decided to think about it when the time came. Now that he had come back to his senses, Ryuk noticed that he was completely naked, but it was none of his concern because he was in the demon realm anyway. He decided to try to live on like a real person, and the first thing he needed was to find clothes. Wondering when was the last time he wore actual clothes that felt good, Ryuk started moving toward a different place. As the scene shifted, we saw a beautiful landscape with a river. Ryuk thought about what he could make clothes out of since he had no materials. Just then, as he found the lake, he decided to look around for a bit. He saw a giant bird creature slammed to the ground, lifeless. Ryuk realized this was likely the result of a territory dispute among the various monsters. Even though the bird monster seemed quite strong, it had met its end, and judging by the lack of major wounds, Ryuk concluded that the bird had probably died from poison and not any physical injury. This was all in Ryuk's favor, since he needed leather anyway. He immediately began transforming his hands into a blade like Alex Mercer from Prototype. As he had the abilities, he decided to go ahead. He remembered that back in the lab, they had taught him how to kill monsters properly. So he decided to cut the stomach in a straight line, then make incisions on the limbs to separate the leather. He decided to give it a try, but as soon as he stabbed the bird, the poison started spewing out and Ryuk completely inhaled it. To everyone's surprise, nothing happened to him. He thought it was just a bad smell and got a notification that there was no damage done. Still, he knew the smell and poison were bad, so he decided to wash it out. Then we saw some real censorship while the bird lay down. Ryuk was happy with his first attempt, as almost all the leather was extracted. The next step was to clear out all the poison from the leather so that it could be worn. But the boy was shocked to see that even though the leather looked soft, its material was heavy to lift and too stiff. Ryuk thought that maybe because it was monster leather, it was as stiff as iron plates. Just then he got an idea. He transformed his hands back to physical form and started slamming the leather with ferocious punches, not leaving any room for it to escape. The process he was doing was called tanning, which was used to remove hair, fats, and extra stiffness from the leather to make it soft. After multiple punches, the leather was finally soft and fluffy. Now Ryuk realized that he had found real industrial leather. The bird monster was still censored. Ryuk wondered if this much leather was enough for wearing, since he was quite tall. As he was contemplating, we saw the bird come back to life again with a tiny fire suddenly lighting up near its tail. The bird was shocked, wondering where its skin had gone. Meanwhile, Ryuk was tearing down the leather to make it fit, and he punched 2 holes into it to pass through his arms. After tightening it up with a leaf rope, Ryuk was happy with the result. The leather perfectly fit his body, and now his whole body could be covered. Just then, Ryuk realized that some of the poison had not been properly washed off. It had not fully disappeared, but since he didn't want to wash it again, he decided to wear it anyway. As he turned around, he saw that the bird was awake and wondered how it was still not dead. We come to know that this bird monster was called the Rigger, and according to Ryuk's knowledge, it should have been properly dead because he had hit its vital points. But then the bird started shaking its head, and Ryuk was shocked, wondering if it was just his imagination or if the bird was truly understanding him. Ryuk began thinking that if the Rigger was alive, maybe it was also one of the immortal types and could come back to life a few times. In the past, Ryuk would have definitely killed it since he was a hunter. But since the opponent was already weakened and no longer a threat, there was no need for Ryuk to kill the revived bird. Our boy started laughing, telling the bird that if it understood him, then it should know that both of them were lucky, and since this was their second life, they should do their best to live well. And if their fates were intertwined, they might meet again somewhere. After saying these words, he turned around and started walking away. He entered a cave while thinking that now that his clothes were sorted, he needed a place to stay. Inside the cave, there were multiple ferocious monsters, and one large-looking centipede tried to attack Ryuk. But in front of his raw power, it was nothing. Ryuk didn't even care about it until he came closer, and just with one flick of his hand, the centipede was finished, its head separated from its ugly body. Meanwhile, Ryuk was contemplating that the cave was too dark, so he decided not to live inside it. The scene shifted to a heavily snow-falling area, like an avalanche. Multiple monsters were shocked because when they tried to attack Ryuk, it backfired. The boy thought it would be tough to find food, so he rejected the place too. Inside the forest, Ryuk was getting funny smells, and inside the swamps it was too humid. He even tried going into lava mountains, but it was too hot and hard for him to stay without sweating. So finally, after going through all these places, Ryuk came outside and started looking around the valley. He spotted a location that looked pretty nice. It had a waterfall and nearby water enough for survival. There were also wild monsters that were edible. Even Ryuk could never have imagined that the demon realm was this beautiful. He decided to take a closer look and jumped from a cliff down to the ground. He saw that the water was actually clear and there were plenty of fish. Even though they were monster fish, Ryuk knew he could capture and cook them on the spot. It would feel like camping for him. Since this place was like a natural fish farm, building a house nearby was not a bad idea at all. To add to the ambience, there were flowers, and the air was fresh, giving Ryuk a peaceful feeling. He finally decided that this would be the place to build his house. As the boy smiled, the scene shifted to another location nearby the valley, where a strange portal began sparking and opening, tearing through space. Someone came down at insane speed, crashing into the ground and kicking up a lot of dust. It was a small creature with robotic hands and red eyes, while a greatly evil aura emanated from him. As the robot looked around, he wondered if this place was the demon realm. Meanwhile, the scene shifts back again, and we see that Ryuk was looking at the spot where he was thinking of building his home, finding it good because he could also hear the sound of the waterfall about 10 minutes away. He finally decided to build his own house, and first, he needed a place to build it. So he used his powers of the Chimera to cut off multiple trees and to plane out the area a little so that he got a plain surface to build on and some wood to build with. He levitated multiple logs together and separated the good quality wood from the bad quality ones, knowing that it should be good enough. As Ryuk was walking around, he realized that the ground was too bumpy and needed cleaning up. So he slammed onto the ground with his monstrous whips and took out the tree roots with a jolt, clearing out the ground like a playing field. Knowing that the sunlight would come directly inside his house, he just moved his hands and feet according to what he felt. But still, the place was nice and clean. He started picking up the heavy logs and decided to choose the strongest ones and create pillars at the corners. After doing this, he was really having fun building his first house. Then he took slightly weaker wood and formed planks out of them and laid them onto the floor. For the walls, he decided to use mucus from the snail-type monsters, as he did not have any nails and needed to stick the logs together. He knew that whenever the snail mucus hardened, it became as tough as stone, and sticking the logs together with it would also work for waterproofing. For the finishing touches, Ryuk used his silk technique once again and threw it all around the place, making a net so that no one would come around his home, and if anyone dared to enter, Ryuk would come to know immediately. We see a really suspicious-looking house with a red aura emanating from far away, and just with 3 materials, logs, snail monster mucus, and silkworm cocoon thread, the house of Ryuk was finally complete. But it was still a bit disappointing because Ryuk felt like something was missing. He wanted to remember what a house looked like when he was a human. He remembered that inside the lab, they were taught by some people about a typical house and how it looked before the gates appeared. In the training videos, he saw that the humans always raised something in the yard, be it vegetables, flowers, or pets. But as you cannot find a dog in the demon realm, he decided to make a vegetable garden. But one question still remained. What could the boy even grow in the demon realm? Just then he remembered something, that there was a snow mountain nearby. So he thought he should plant some mandras from the mountains so that he had enough radishes. As the scene shifts, we see that Ryuk was in the snowy mountain once again, which was the mandra's habitat. It was around the summit of the snowy mountain where demonic energy was the strongest, so the mandras found it quite comforting. It was snowing at the whole place quite a lot, so Ryuk remembered that even on the day he was abducted to the lab, it snowed heavily, as if there was no end to it. Back then, it was so cold that Ryuk thought being kidnapped was rather a good thing. But just then he immediately got a realization that becoming a chimera does have its advantages, because now he did not have to worry about dying from cold or hunger. Ryuk noticed the demonic energy, which was at its peak, and he realized that he had finally arrived. As Ryuk analyzed the whole area, he saw a few leaves coming out of the ground, and he was thankful that he did not waste his trip because these were mandra's leaves. These mandras were delicate and vulnerable to stress, so they could die from even small environmental changes. Relocating them was a task, and Ryuk realized that young and adaptable individuals were probably better for it. He decided to take 3 roots for now, and as he took them out, he thought to himself that he should have covered his ears beforehand. But as he took out the mandra, he was shocked to see that the creature was cutely sleeping, and he thought there was something wrong with it. So he took out another one, and all 3 of them were actually sleeping soundly, not even waking up after being taken out of the soil. It was as if these cute creatures were talking in their sleep. Ryak was familiar with the mandra scream, which was a phenomenon caused by humans cultivating mandras artificially. In the human world, where there was very little demonic energy, the mandras came under extreme stress, and if someone forcefully pulled them out, they would let out a shrieking scream and die along with the person who heard the scream. But since there was no scream, Ryak guessed that it was because of the demon realm. They were not even resisting, and mandras had the nature of struggling to run away if they got out. But these cute creatures were slowly waking up, smiling while looking at Ryak. Then he realized that maybe these creatures were recognizing Ryak as a fellow creature of the demon realm, since his body also contained the mandra cells. But all this worked in Ryak's favor because the less stressed the mandras were, the better they would grow. Later, when they would grow well, Ryak wondered if he should ask for a few roots and make some trees, because the fruit could be a snack. But he also knew that forcefully plucking the fruit could be extremely poisonous, so he decided to try and persuade the little creatures carefully. Suddenly, as Ryak decided to go toward his house, several screams came into his ears from the opposite direction. He realized that there must be hunters nearby, and even though Ryak was not able to comprehend why they came all the way to the dangerous snowy mountain, he decided that he should go and grab the gate stones from them. As the scene shifts, we see two adventurers who were actually brutally damaged from the monsters. One of them was cursing his other team members, realizing that they had used them as bait and ran away. But the other immediately told the first one to pull themselves together because the monsters were coming at them once again. These monsters were filthy-looking rabbits with jaws that opened like octopuses. The man was somehow able to protect himself for a while by using a blue-colored force field. But the monsters were so powerful that the defense wall was about to break, and the rabbits were rapidly scratching the wall like crazy. The man who was shielding both of them was almost crying, realizing that he should have stuck to menial chores and not come looking for a chimera. As the defensive wall broke down from the punches of the rabbits, the man screamed for somebody to save him, and just then, something dropped down from the sky, scattering all the snow around it. Even the deadly rabbits were shocked, and the adventurers wondered who or what it was. They were shocked to see the silhouette of a person coming out from the smoke. It was none other than Ryak himself, who realized that these were the snow rabbits who were low-level creatures in front of him. The monsters tried attacking our boy, but they sensed something really evil and maniacal inside him. So even before Ryak got to them, the rabbits ran away, knowing that it would be instant death for them. The adventurers were shocked, not able to believe that the B-class monsters were running away at the sight of a mysterious man. Nonetheless, they started thanking our boy for saving them, introducing themselves as Seong and Kim. Upon asking the boy's name, he introduced himself as Ryak. Hearing the name, Kim thought the boy was mysterious, and with the outfit that Ryak was wearing, he was thrown off even more. Ryak asked the adventurers what they were doing at the snowy mountain when they looked like D-class hunters. The adventurers gave an obvious explanation, that they needed money and they were not getting it by doing menial chores. They explained that they had received a request to capture a chimera, and as the reward was good, they decided to do it. Ryak was alerted, wondering if they were searching for him instead. But the adventurers further explained that one test subject had escaped from the lab and it was a mechanical creature, so it jumped into the gate while fleeing. The boy realized that if it was a mechanical creature, then it could not possibly be him, and it was a relief because Ryak was not being searched. But he asked the adventurers where their luggage was, because if they had come to the demon realm empty-handed, then it was a mistake, and they should have had a few gate stones. Kim explained that his team members, or rather those traitors, took everything from them, and they had planned this from the start. Kim realized that he should have known about it since they were all B-class hunters, and the D-class ones were a burden on them. Ryak realized that in this case, the gate stone must be with those guys. But just then, Seong excused himself and asked Ryak if he had any plans of returning to the real world, because they were already near their limit. And if they got contaminated by the demonic energy anymore, then it would be bad. We come to know that the time a hunter can endure in the demon realm varies greatly depending on their awakening class. and if they do not return to the human world in time and purify the demonic energy, then most of them will die. That does not apply to Ryuk because he was a chimera. As Ryuk was thinking about it, the adventurers were begging him to take them back to the human world because one of them had a pregnant wife at home, and she would be due next week. But just then, Ryuk sensed something, and without saying anything further, he jumped away without listening to the adventurers anymore. Both Kim and Seong were now depressed, wondering where Ryuk was going, begging him to take them with him. As the scene shifts, we see the mechanical creature standing near the cliff, knowing that he could not go any farther because it was dangerous. The other three adventurers were just behind the mechanical creature, trying to capture him quickly, and they decided to attack him all at once. But suddenly something awakened inside the robot, and he decided that the dangerous ones would definitely be eliminated. We come to know that the adventurers were in a squad getting ready to attack the robot together. But something flew out of the hand of the robot, and he started dematerializing, getting ready to fight with an evil look in his eyes. As the scene shifts, we see that Ryuk had arrived at the cliff, and he saw blood splattered all around, wondering if he was just a step too late, for missing all the action because all the hunters had already run away, or rather, were decimated by something, and their bags had now fallen onto the ground. From looking at the situation, you realize that they must have ditched their gear so they could run away fast. But there were many animal tracks mixed with a child's footprints, which were chasing them. So Ryuk realized that whatever it was, it could change form during the fight. Just then we see a flashback of the adventurers, as Kim told Ryuk that the mechanical creature was made out of liquid metal, so it could freely change its shape. But the material was so rare that the scientists made it small, like the size of a child or a large dog. This information coincided with what Ryuk was seeing. As the boy smiled, realizing that for a mechanical creature, it could overwhelm 5 B-ranked hunters alone, which was quite impressive. As the scene shifts, we come back to the place where the adventurers were lying down. Kim was consoling Seong, who thought it was over for him because his whole body had been tainted by demonic energy. Kim told him not to say crap like that, because his kid was due next week. But as Seong was not able to walk anymore, he told Kim that he should inform his wife about everything and tell her that Seong was sorry he couldn't make it back. It was a really emotional scene, as Kim started crying, wanting Seong to just hang on a little longer because he believed that some miracle might still happen. But suddenly Kim heard some footsteps, and as he turned around, tear-faced, he was shocked to see that Ryuk was back, and on his back was the gear bag that the adventurers had carried. Kim immediately dropped down on the ground and started begging Ryuk for saving them. It was then that the boy remembered once again that the adventurers did not have any gate stone. But Kim was not stopping, explaining to Ryuk that inside the lawless demon realm, once they lose, it's over. That's why Kim decided to offer 2 10 million won checks, so they could buy 1 gate stone for themselves to get out. Ryuk was shocked after looking at the checks, but Kim knew that if they didn't return now, they would definitely die. Even Ryuk realized that although he didn't need the money now, it could come in handy if he decided to go to the human world later. So Ryuk accepted the check and gave the adventurers a gate stone, breaking it and causing a portal to open immediately. Kim bowed down in front of our boy, promising that he would never forget what Ryuk had done for them, as long as they lived. Kim started going towards Seong, telling him to get up because he knew that if they hurried, they could survive. But Ryuk was actually shocked, asking the adventurers if the gate stone was too expensive, because it used to cost around 200,000 won in the human world. But the adventurers were shocked, strangely wondering why Ryuk was talking about something so ancient, because nowadays these gate stones go for around 1 million won each. As Ryuk felt he had received too much, he decided to count the extra money as a fee for saving them. The boy tapped Kim on the shoulder while a blue energy flared out from the adventurer, and even Seong was now having the same condition. They both realized that the boy was infusing mana into the adventurers, but for them, it was a really dangerous process because infusing mana was something even an E-rank hunter would avoid. If the mana collided and tangled, then the mana core inside the person could shatter, and they would both die. Kim thought that if this continued, all 3 of them would definitely die. But in front of him, his friend was suddenly all right, and Seong was looking like a new adventurer, realizing that the demonic energy had been completely purified. The man immediately hugged Kim, happy that he was actually alive. The adventurers decided to go out from the gate immediately. Kim bowed down in front of our boy, promising the same thing as before, that he would never forget the favor. Both of them were shocked that Ryuk could purify demonic energy with mana, because it was only possible with overwhelming amounts of it. So they couldn't comprehend who Ryuk actually was. As the scene shifts, we see that the boy was still kind of disappointed after looking at his house, which looked straight out of a horror movie. But we see that Ryuk was just analyzing the place and was happy that no one had intruded while he was out. In his tiny, precious home, he wanted to go through everything he had looted because he knew that he had gotten some unexpected earnings which made for a satisfying outing. But as he turned down, he saw that the mandras were calling out to something, and it was just their little cries. Ryuk realized that their leaves were now getting droopy, maybe from all the travel. So the boy decided to plant them right away, thinking that the spot in front of his house would do. But still, even after being planted, the mandras were displeased. Ryuk realized that maybe these creatures didn't like the forced relocation, and that's why they were still looking unhappy. Or maybe they were just hungry from traveling without soil. So Ryuk decided to give them some mana, because it usually helps to power up creatures. After getting enough mana, the mandras were smiling once again like the cute creatures they were. And as they smiled, Ryuk was happy too, thinking it was successful. But as we get a back scene of the boy, we see that Ryuk was sensing some kind of aura, as two eyes were looking at him from behind the bush. It was none other than the mechanical creature itself, who was going around the boy and looking at him constantly. But Ryuk knew that if the creature wanted to do something, it would show itself, and there was no need to interfere. The boy stored the checks of money for later when he would need them, and decided to unpack all the stuff he had gotten. There were many things, including a portable burner and cooking set, which were essential gear for outdoor cooking, along with gate stones and spare clothes. There were 8 gate stones that let the user travel freely between the human world and the demon realm. And with the spare clothes, Ryuk had some extra wear, but he realized that they were contaminated and needed washing. The boy had also gotten 2 sleeping bags, so now he didn't need a bed to sleep. But suddenly Ryuk noticed that inside the bag was a bowl of ramen, and he remembered that the last time he had it was back in the orphanage. As he was hungry, he thought it was the perfect time to cook some ramen. He read the ramen cooking instructions and went out to grab some water. But just then, multiple monster fishes came attacking the boy. He was as calm as he could be, just like Lin, as he decided to flick the fishes lightly so they wouldn't get decimated. He thought that fish might taste good inside the ramen. And for eggs, he grabbed some monster eggs instead of actual poultry eggs, along with something crunchy to substitute the green onions and other toppings for taste. As the ingredients were ready, he decided to go back inside. But we see that the mechanical creature was also following our boy, and its stomach was rumbling like crazy as it realized that Ryuk was going to cook. On the other hand, the boy turned on the pocket stove and started cooking the ramen altogether with all the ingredients at once. Even though the instructions didn't say when he should add fish, he decided to just boil it all together for the taste. But as the cooking continued, a vicious smell was spreading all around his house, and the mandras were not able to breathe in such a suffocating stench. Even the boy wondered if this was how ramen was supposed to smell, but since he had eaten it a long time ago, he didn't know what was going on. Meanwhile, the mechanical creature was also getting attracted by the cooking smell. Wanting some too, it immediately transformed into a cute dog, because it had seen in the lab that humans liked dogs, and those who looked pitiful would get help. So it started crouching on 3 legs, pretending to be injured and whining. But Ryuk immediately realized that it was the same mechanical creature who had been trailing him for quite a while, and now it had turned into a dog. Ryuk wondered if it was trying to lower the boy's guard and was pretending to be hurt to gain sympathy. But from its actions, Ryuk realized that the creature was just a clueless young specimen who was smiling after looking at him. As the boy wondered how such a thing could escape the lab and make it into the demon realm when it was so obvious, Ryuk just looked at the dog, telling it that the food was ready and that it would get some too. Both the dog and Ryuk looked at the ramen, which looked incredibly tasty to them. but it was as awful as it could get. As both the dog and the boy started eating, Ryuk began having flashbacks of how they ate ramen and how delicious it used to be. Due to the nostalgia, Ryuk forgot how the ramen actually tasted and still ate every bite of it, because it was the same as he remembered from his younger days. The ramen taste that Ryuk remembered from his youth was strong enough to overpower any other smell. After eating, it was time for the boy to clean up, and the dog started going away. But as the boy noticed something, he immediately called out to the dog, asking him if he wasn't limping from his left leg earlier. After hearing that, the dog realized that he had messed up and immediately lifted his left leg instead of the right one. As the scene shifts, we see that Ryuk had gotten near the waterfall and had finished doing the dishes, so he decided to do the laundry. Now, he did not have any good memories of flower pollen, but he couldn't keep living in leather clothes forever because the weather could be dry sometimes, and it could get hot too. He was not a caveman, so he wanted to dress normally. As the boy was using the stick to clean the pollen out of the clothes, he knew that if he washed too hard, they might tear, so he decided to do it gently. But with only a single smack of the stick, all the rocks were flung into the sky, and the ground broke, with the cloth being tattered into pieces. The boy made an oblivious face while thinking that since he had another set left, it was not a bad thing. But as Ryuk analyzed his surroundings, he saw that the mechanical creature had turned into a rock this time. He wondered why the creature kept lingering around. Even when he was eating ramen and doing the dishes, the mechanical creature was a fish, and when the boy was looking at the flowers that looked like forsythia, the robot had turned into a log. The mechanical creature was approaching the boy just by changing its appearance, without doing anything special. But just when the creature saw bugs, it transformed and started running away frantically. We come to know that the robot hated bugs, and from this, Ryuk realized that the mental age of the mechanical creature was probably under 5 years old. And with the awkward speech patterns it showed, Ryuk knew that the robot had a side effect from when a young Chimera was forcefully injected with knowledge that its brain could not process. Even when Ryuk had spotted the now transformed robot, he acted like he saw nothing, and the robot wanted to hide as soon as it could. As the flashback ends and the scene shifts, we see that Ryuk was finally able to clean a piece of t-shirt, slowly but surely realizing that doing laundry for him was more difficult than he would have ever thought. But still, he managed to get it done. Now that he was looking at it, he realized that the t-shirt was small for him and he would not be able to wear it. Still, he decided to dry it up because, after all that washing, throwing it away would be a pity. As he needed to go and check the state of the mangas, he went away. But as soon as Ryuk disappeared, one rock opened its eyes, and we see that it was the robot, who was happy after looking at the piece of cloth. Thinking that since Ryuk was also wearing clothes, the robot was going to wear them too, and this t-shirt was a perfect fit for it. Now the robot was happy, declaring that these clothes were hers to claim. And just then, the robot started transforming itself into a human with long hair, and we come to know that the robot was actually a female, not a male. After wearing the t-shirt, she took the human form, which fit everything perfectly. As the scene shifts, we see that Ryuk was now in a dilemma, wondering what was happening with the mangas, because they were withered once again, and even they didn't know what was happening. The leaves kept withering and the roots were a bit dry too. That was strange because the boy had pulled out weeds at the exact time, and all the weeds were already out of the field. But then he realized that something was deep inside the ground. As the boy started digging out every bit of it, there were all sorts of things underground, and also little worm monsters that were feeding off the energy of the mangas. Ryuk now decided to grind it thoroughly to make it smooth, so that his mistake would not be repeated. It was just a temporary relief, and the mangas were happy, but Ryuk knew that he needed to make a proper vegetable bed around them, so he wondered if he should just make it about the size of his house. Just then, cute little steps appeared in front of the boy, as the robot, now turned into a cute girl, said hello to Ryuk. The boy immediately knew that it was the robot and thought that she took a human form because she was ready to talk. The girl tried to act all surprised, asking Ryuk if this log house was his. Now that Ryuk had started talking with her, she was pleased, asking the boy if he was a native around here. Ryuk wondered if he should tease the little girl for a while and asked her which tribe she was from. The robot was shocked, trying to dodge the question, explaining that she came from beyond the waterfall, really far away. She had traveled so far that Ryuk would not be able to know where it is. It was such an obvious lie that Ryuk decided to have fun, asking the girl if she was from the coconut tribe just beyond the waterfall. Knowing nothing about it, the girl immediately shook her head, declaring that she was from the coconut tribe. But then Ryuk immediately noticed that she was wearing the shirt that he had washed. The girl became angry, telling Ryuk that in their tribe there was a rule: whoever picks something gets to keep it, so now the shirt was hers to claim. Ryuk thought for a while and told the girl that she could have it. But then Ryuk asked her why someone from the coconut tribe was so far away from them. Hearing that, the robot girl explained that she was expelled from her tribe and had a favor to ask. She screamed with all her might, telling Ryuk that she wanted to live with him and would love it if Ryuk would allow it. Ryuk was shocked, asking the girl again if she was sure, and she mumbled, thinking that since there were no bugs around the place and there was a house, she thought it was safe, and that's why she wanted to live here. Ryuk sighed in relief, as he also was glad to know that the robot only needed a place to rest. He finally agreed, but on one condition: if she was staying in the house, she would have to do her part. The robot girl was excited, just asking Ryuk what he wanted her to do. Ryuk told her that he needed help plowing the vegetable bed and wondered if she could help him because he wanted to build a new home for the mandras. Hearing that, the girl immediately grabbed the wooden stick from Ryuk's hand, telling him to leave it to her since she was really strong and confident with physical labor. It was then that we saw a shocking transformation, where the girl was able to plow the whole field and make all the worms get out with insane strength, which was unimaginable for such a small body. Now that she was happy, she was no longer hiding her true identity at all, which could be revealed from the power she possessed. But Ryuk thought that maybe it was something else completely, and as she had lived in the lab for her whole life, she didn't know what a normal kid was like. So she was doing her best to impress Ryuk. The boy asked her about her name, introducing himself as Ryuk, and this made the girl stop because she didn't have a name. But to impress the boy, she knew she would have to make a new name, just like the pretty flower she had seen earlier. She declared herself as Nari. Ryuk joked about her being too narrow. The girl screamed that it was Nari instead. As the scene shifts, we see that the whole place was done, and the vegetable bed was ready after just a few moments. Ryuk had also made a stone fence, which was not letting the soil slip. Now all the mandras were happy after getting their new home. Even Ryuk realized that the creatures were happy and that he should have plowed the field earlier. But suddenly, Nari started crying, and Ryuk wondered why she was crying all of a sudden. We then come to know that the mandras who were playing in the field were reminding her of her friends. But Ryuk was sure that there was no way those kinds of things existed at the research lab. Before he could inquire any further, Nari was stunned, and Ryuk wondered what was happening. A dark miasma started coming toward the beautiful place, and the whole place turned into a red hell. Nari got down onto the ground, shivering, not even able to get up. Ryuk told her not to be scared, because it was just the sound of monsters hunting each other. It was then that Nari revealed that before she came to the valley, she saw a monster that looked like a chick, and several monsters were attacking it. Even Ryuk could sense that Nari was telling the truth, and somehow she was also feeling that the chick was hurting badly, as it had gotten bitten by some venomous monsters. Ryuk explained that the chick was going to be eaten soon, because this was the demon realm, and it was a place only for the truly strong. But then Ryuk suddenly asked the girl if she wanted to save that monster. As a Chimera who was only able to follow orders, she told Ryuk that she couldn't save the monster, even though her body was resisting it. Ryuk immediately realized that the side effects of the mind control command were still lingering inside the robot, and it couldn't move according to its own will. Ryuk wondered if he should help the girl a little, but in a way that didn't sound like a command. So instead of commanding, Ryuk asked Nari if she wanted to go and check on the bird, because if she helped, maybe the chick could survive. Hearing that, Nari immediately flew away, telling Ryuk that she would be back after the lookout was done. As the scene shifts, we see that multiple ant-like monsters were attacking a cute little cotton ball of a chick. But before they could eat the bird, Nari came to the rescue, kicking each and every monster that was coming toward the small creature. The girl was determined to save the bird. She remembered her past, when she was still the robot and everyone else hated her because she was placed first once again in a ranked match. They knew that at this rate, everyone else would be used for high-failure experiments. Just to save themselves, they started bullying the mechanical robot, telling her to let them live too. They told Nari that if only she weren't there, then their lives would be different. To the robot, it was completely nonsensical because she was only doing as she was told, and still she was getting punished. But now, she was determined not to be like that anymore, because bullying someone in large numbers was really bad, and the monsters were doing just that with the cute little chick. Nari gave a ferocious blow to all the monsters, decimating them. Meanwhile, Ryuk was supplying energy to the mandras, but suddenly the girl came back, calling out to Ryuk. As he turned around with a smile, he saw that Nari was crying, because the chick she had saved was not getting better at all. But the moment he saw the bird, Ryuk remembered something. It was about the giant bird he had slain once. He immediately felt that he had seen it somewhere. Meanwhile, we see that Nari was crying because the chick wasn't waking up. It was looking bad to her, and she wondered if the creature was dying. Ryuk decided to take a look himself and used his mana to infuse into the chick. He came to know that, luckily, there were no fatal injuries. We learned that each monster's energy holds a story, and the bird that he had skinned had now shrunk and gotten lighter in color. But it was still the same because, just like the undead-type monster from before, the bird also had such an ability. Ryuk wondered why it got so small, and if it had something to do with how it healed differently from others. As Ryuk was thinking about it, Nari asked if the bird was dying. Ryuk calmly told her that the bird was just starving and had probably gotten too small to find its own food. He explained that he gave it some mana, so it would heal on its own if left alone. However, after looking at the injured chick, Nari wasn't ready to leave it alone because she had been treated the same way before. She thought that if they left the bird, it would die because it was all limp like a rice cake. So she requested Ryuk to let her raise it because she wanted to take care of it. She even agreed to train and feed it well and promised to do so. Ryuk was strangely happy, knowing that the bird was going to grow really big. But upon hearing that, Nari said she would only feed it a little so it wouldn't get that big. Ryuk agreed, telling her she could do whatever she wanted and that it might even guard the yard someday. As the scene shifts, we see drool dripping from the bird's mouth as it wondered where it was. As soon as it opened its eyes, it saw Ryuk, the man who had skinned it before. But what it didn't notice was that it was being held by a small girl who immediately tossed it into the air to celebrate because it had woken up. The bird squeaked like a penguin, unable to comprehend what a little girl was doing in the demon world, but she was just happy that it was alive. Just then, Ryuk noticed something. It wasn't a fluke. He could actually understand every word the bird was saying. He could understand its feelings and speech. As the scene shifts, we see Nari had bandaged the bird, telling Ryuk that the healing was done. Meanwhile, the bird was annoyed that it couldn't move. Then the girl told Ryuk she had picked a name for it. Since the bird kept squeaking every time it tried to speak, she named it Squeak. Ryuk didn't care about the name and simply told her it wasn't bad. The bird immediately stood up, looking angrily at Nari and asking why she was nomming him. He already had a name. But before he could say anything, Nari toppled over a whole utensil of water, thinking he was squeaking because he was thirsty again. It was surprising even for Squeak, who puffed up like a pufferfish. Nari wondered what she should do. Ryuk realized Nari couldn't understand the bird, and that Squeak wanted her to stop giving him more water. Instead of letting the bird speak, Ryuk told her to stop giving it water, otherwise it could be harmful. But Nari misunderstood, thinking it wasn't thirsty but probably hungry, so she should find food instead. Meanwhile, Ryuk noticed he had more stuff lying around, so he thought about building a storage shelf. Since he didn't need it too big, he cut a medium-sized log into pieces, but as soon as the blade touched it, the wood cracked in half. Ryuk wondered what went wrong since he did the same with logs for the table and chairs, and they hadn't cracked. Squeak watched from a distance and toppled over the table, telling Ryuk that the wood had a different color, meaning it was softwood, not hardwood. Ryuk didn't turn but asked if the wood's strength changed by type. Squeak confirmed it. Ryuk then asked what wood color was the strongest, and the bird replied it was obviously red oak. Then the bird realized Ryuk could understand him, which was shocking. No human could speak the monster language. But Ryuk didn't react and instead wondered where he could find red-colored wood. Squeak, still having all his powers, decided to try mind control on Ryuk to find out more. But as he started his mind-reading skill, he saw that Ryuk continued speaking while a giant monster inside him blocked all the mind waves. Ryuk calmly asked why he couldn't find the red-colored wood even after searching. Now the bird was sweating and pale, realizing Ryuk had blocked the mind reading and could hear him loud and clear. Ryuk explained he could hear the bird's thoughts as human words. Strangely, the bird could also understand human speech. Squeak hesitated about whether to tell Ryuk the truth, but the boy assumed he was probably a rare smart monster, something he'd only heard about, never seen. Ryuk asked if they'd met before, and Squeak admitted they had. He really wanted to meet Ryuk again. Ryuk was shocked, but the bird explained that Ryuk had saved him, and from that day he had promised to return the favor if they ever met again. Ryuk realized that when he removed the leather from the bird's body, the poison was also removed, and its core remained intact. Yukyuk was happy, realizing he'd done a good deed. He asked the bird if it could help now, and the bird agreed after some hesitation, telling Ryuk to follow him to where the redwood was growing. As the scene shifts, we see fire all around, and Nari is screaming while running from someone. She yells for him to get away, not wanting to go back to the lab. As the heat rises, Nari cries and runs with all her might until she finally collapses, unable to continue. She has a panic attack, realizing the man chasing her is from the lab and he has come to capture her. We learn Nari is terrified of fire, finding it scary enough to paralyze her completely. Meanwhile, a man with long hair and a futuristic ninja-like jacket checks something on his smartphone, confirming the mechanical creature can indeed change shape freely. Even though he doesn't feel great about attacking something that looks like a child, this is a matter of life and death for him, so he complies. The man materializes a fireball shaped like claws, preparing to attack the already terrified girl, telling her it's the end. But just then, the bird and Ryuk return. Ryuk is annoyed. He just wanted to finish the shelf and eat, and now someone's interrupting their peace. Even the bird is angry, deciding to help the girl first and return to the woods later. Ryuk realizes Nari is scared of fire, and it's so frightening to her that she doesn't look okay. He decides to put out the fire first. The bird wonders what kind of jerk would hurt a crying child. On the other hand, the man is surprised to see someone who looks like a caveman, wondering where Ryuk came from. He assumes Ryuk is also after the mechanical creature and tells him to leave while he's still being nice. But Ryuk, annoyed by the man's chatter, says he talks too much, and it's getting on his nerves. Now even the man is annoyed, thinking Ryuk has too much attitude for someone who just showed up. He raises his hands and slams them onto the ground, unleashing a large-scale fire attack. Ryuk remains calm. Instead of attacking the man directly, he targets the cliff above him, causing a landslide of rocks to fall onto the man. The fire user is too clumsy to detect the attack and is immediately buried. After everything calms down, Ryuk checks on Nari and asks how she's feeling. The girl slowly gets up. Ryuk tells her that if she's scared, she should knock that fear out cold, and when it wakes back up, knock it out again. While saying this, Ryuk walks up to the man and grabs his hair to pull him out, only to be surprised when a wig comes off. The man is actually bald, his shiny head reflecting the sunlight. After Ryuk looked at the bald guy, he was shocked, wondering why this young man was so bald. Even the bird seemed to pity the boy. On the other hand, Kim stared at the shiny head and burst into laughter like a crazy girl, thinking Baldy was really funny. Since the man had been subdued for Kim, he didn't seem so scary anymore. Unique, however, was a little troubled because only a few minutes ago Kim had been pushed around by Baldy. That alone wasn't unusual, but then the bird told Ryuk that once he saw what it was about to show him, he would understand the situation better. The bird activated mental resonance, an ability that allowed one to see into an opponent's memories and could also transmit them to others. Suddenly, a flashback of Kim's memory appeared. A senile scientist was experimenting with a strange metallic liquid, and it was Kim Nari who was being developed. As she gradually gained self-awareness, she realized things were bad. The scientist repeatedly used fire in his experiments on her, which explained her deep fear of flames. Under the excuse of durability testing, the liquid form she inhabited was burned again and again. The scene shifted as Ryuk tapped Kim on the head, complimenting her for doing well. He knew her trauma wouldn't vanish so easily, but this was at least a step forward. Then he asked the bird what they should do with Baldy. Hearing this, Kim smiled and told Ryuk that she had an idea. The scene changed to Baldy hanging by a rope near a waterfall, with water pouring continuously over him. The stream made him nauseous, while Kim laughed, saying that if Baldy was drenched, fire couldn't reach them, and the uncle wouldn't be scary anymore. Meanwhile, Baldy thought bitterly that he hadn't come to the demon realm for this. But Kim believed that since the uncle was bad, he deserved it. Even when Ryuk tried to tell her not to be so harsh about someone's appearance, he was secretly relieved. Kim seemed to be healing from her past faster than expected. We then saw Ryuk collecting water. When the bird asked him what he was doing, it turned out he was preparing to make ramen. Hearing that, Kim grew excited, knowing Ryuk's fish ramen was delicious. Ryuk teased her, asking if even the coconut tribe ate fish ramen. Kim happily agreed, going along with his joke. Meanwhile, Baldy observed Ryuk and the girl carefully, realizing the man was clearly at least an A-rank hunter, maybe even hiding greater power. Kim went off swimming, determined to catch some fish. Baldy speculated that Ryuk might be a reclusive hunter who operated underground, but to hang a person up and cook ramen in front of them seemed excessive, even for the demon realm. Ryuk boiled a large pot of water, preparing 3 packets of ramen. Soon after, Kim returned with 3 fish that had actually tried to eat her but failed. Ryuk told her he would only use one, so they should release the others. Excited, Kim agreed, urging him to put it in quickly. Baldy, still hanging, was stunned. If Ryuk boiled the monster fish for ramen, the broth would turn out incredibly fishy and lacking flavor. On top of that, the water ratio wasn't right for proper ramen. He wondered if Ryuk even knew what ramen really was. Kim, however, was too thrilled to care. Then suddenly all 3 of them froze as a voice called out, telling them to wait. It was Baldy himself. He said if they freed him, he would cook the ramen for them. The scene shifted to the hunter at the cooking table, tearing open a ramen packet. For some, it might just be ramen, but for him right now, it was life or death. His survival depended on it, with 2 powerful beings and a mysterious bird watching him. Baldy knew that ramen, by nature, was simple and pure, so he decided to stick to the orthodox method. After all, he had no real cooking knowledge and usually survived on convenience store meals. Trusting his instincts, he measured the water as best he could. With 3 portions, he didn't have much choice. He added the noodles and soup base to the boiling pot, setting the cooking time to exactly 4 minutes and 30 seconds. His reasoning: his heartbeat was 60 beats per minute. By counting to 270 beats, he believed he could time the ramen perfectly. At that moment, Baldy was more focused and serious than he had ever been. After the 270 heartbeats were over, Sejun immediately took out the ramen and gave the noodles an air shower. Exposing them to the air made them springy and soft. He knew that kimchi would have been the perfect side dish, but since they were in the demon realm, he did his best with what he had. With that, he felt no regrets. We then learned that the bald man's real name was Sejun, and his pure ramen had attribute points: taste 90, carbohydrates 24, protein 18, calcium 20, and fat 20. After finishing, Sejun wondered if Ryuk and the others would even bother trying it. But to the 3 of them, this ramen was unlike anything Ryuk had ever cooked. At first, they ate it with skeptical expressions. But once they chewed, their doubts vanished. They felt as though they had ascended straight to the highest floor of heaven, where fairies danced in the air without a care. This was the taste of purity. Kim was shocked, asking Ryuk if it was always this delicious, while Birdie wondered if humans always ate food like this. Ryuk himself was surprised too, but decided to eat quietly and think about it later. By the time the pot was finished, Birdie's belly was swollen and he kept burping. Even so, Sejun nervously asked Ryuk and Kim if the ramen had been to their liking. Kim was disappointed because it was already gone. Ryuk, on the other hand, went straight to the point. He asked Sejun what he wanted. Sejun was caught off guard, but Ryuk explained that since the ramen was so delicious, he felt bad about eating it for free. As thanks, he would grant Sejun a request as long as it was something he could give. At first, Sejun was reluctant, but then he decided to seize the chance. He dropped to his knees and begged Ryuk for guidance. He introduced himself as Hunter Sejun and said he wanted to become as strong as Ryuk himself. Ryuk was stunned, wondering why he was suddenly being treated like a teacher. Sejun explained that Ryuk was the strongest hunter he had ever met, and since he had even built a house here, Sejun assumed he would be in the demon realm for long-term subjugation. In desperation, Sejun even tried to impress him with lies, claiming he could cook other dishes and had certifications. In truth, his father ran a small chicken restaurant, which made him genuinely skilled at frying chicken. He offered to act as their supply shuttle, bringing clothes and goods from the human world in exchange for lessons. He was even willing to pay whatever Ryuk asked if it meant he could receive guidance and eventually reach A rank. But suddenly, Ryuk thought of something and asked Sejun why he had attacked Kim. Was it only for the bounty or something else? At first, Sejun hesitated and asked if Ryuk meant the machine creature. Ryuk told him to play along, and Sejun complied. He explained that he wasn't after bounties, not even Kim Nari. All he truly wanted was to pass the hunter promotion exam, nothing else mattered. Hearing this, Ryuk told Sejun to stand up. Sejun wondered what was going on, but Ryuk explained that just eating delicious food wasn't enough. If Sejun wanted guidance, they should spar. Their last fight had ended too quickly, after all. This made Sejun overjoyed, and he thanked Ryuk again and again. But just then, the ramen pot clattered on the table as Kim interrupted, asking if she could spar with Sejun instead. Ryuk looked at her, wondering if she was serious, but Kim, still fired up after eating the ramen, repeated Ryuk's own words that if something scary appeared, she should knock it out. This time, she wanted to try overcoming her fear of fire herself. Sejun regained some confidence, telling her that although she had forgotten, and even though Ryuk was strong, he himself was not weak either. Ryuk then asked Sejun if he could break a certain stone in front of them. It wasn't just any rock, it was black admonite, said to be several times harder than diamond. Sejun hesitated, saying it would be difficult, and that one usually had to be at least E rank to break it. But before he could finish, the stone shattered into pieces. He froze in shock, and when he turned around, he saw that Kim Nari had destroyed it with a single strike. She now stood confidently, challenging Baldy, Sejun, to a proper sparring match. Meanwhile, Sejun's stomach growled loudly, as the smell of the finished ramen still lingered in the air. As the scene shifts, we see a flashback of the natural awakener, Sejun, who was once a promising hunter. His first awakened ability appeared around the age of 8 when he lit his fire powers, a rare case since most awakeners awakened in their late teens. During his B-rank hunter test, he obliterated every opponent. With natural talent and relentless effort, his growth was astonishing, and before turning 20, he was promoted to A rank. Sejun's rise was explosive, and his fame spread quickly. He dreamed of becoming the greatest hunter, lacking nothing. But suddenly, life hit him early and harshly. One day while showering, he noticed his hair falling out in clumps. At the same age most people began to awaken, he began to go bald instead. In his early 20s, the crown of his head was already thinning, and by his mid-20s, an M-shaped hairline had formed. Sejun fell into despair, trying every treatment and hospital he could find, repeatedly preparing for hair implants. Yet doctors gave him the same answer. All implants would eventually fall out again, and he had to accept the reality. It was hopeless. His handsome looks and natural talent had once made him shine brighter than anyone, but now it was over. As Sejun lost his shine, his performance in competitions declined. He was eliminated again and again, his growth as a hunter stalled, and before long he had become a reckless man wasting time on the couch, watching TV and eating fast food. Then one day, everything changed. On television, he saw an interview with Dr. Han from the Hanbit Research Institute. Something unusual had happened. During an expedition to the demon realm, the doctor had accidentally spilled a rare liquid metal on his bald head. To everyone's shock, even at nearly 90 years old, he grew a full head of hair. When asked if he would develop a cure for baldness, the doctor dismissed the idea. He explained that the demon realm was unpredictable and that he had already used the remaining liquid metal to build a machine creature. Hearing this, Sejun felt crushed. He couldn't believe that when he needed a cure the most, some scientist had wasted such a miracle on building a machine. A few days later, reports announced that the Hanbit Research Institute had lost control of that very liquid metal machine creature. Since the demon realm had no laws, whoever found it first would own it. Se-jun resolved to find it himself, determined to dump the liquid metal over his head and regrow his hair. With that, he entered the demon realm, and the rest of the story unfolded as we already know. The scene shifts back to the present. Se-jun was lying on the ground, realizing that the kid in front of him was far too strong, while Kim-nari laughed because she had won yet again. Birdie was stunned, noting that Se-jun hadn't landed even a single clean hit. Ryuk decided that if Se-jun kept performing like this, he would no longer spar with him. Hearing this, Se-jun's eyes burned with determination as he resolved to do better. Meanwhile, Ryuk had just finished building a sturdy storage shelf from redwood, thanking Birdie for the idea. As Ryuk glanced at Se-jun, he noticed something. Despite taking so many blows, the man looked refreshed. Perhaps it was because he had taken off his wig. In an instant, Se-jun conjured a spear made of fire and prepared to fight Kim-nari once again. Even Birdie admitted that Se-jun's fire control wasn't bad, though he was still losing to a child. Ryuk explained that Kim wasn't an ordinary child. In the next clash, Se-jun charged toward Kim-nari, determined to win this time. Just as his flame staff was about to strike her, she completely transformed into her liquid metal form, evading the attack with ease. Then she rematerialized into her human form and kicked him hard, sending him flying several meters before crashing down, splitting the rock nearby with a massive crack. Kim-nari laughed again, proud that she no longer feared fire, and it was all thanks to Se-jun. The man lay there, wondering if this was the limit of his life as a B-rank hunter with no more techniques left to use. Yet he refused to give up. Deep down, he knew that only in the demon realm could someone like him, who was often seen as a failure, still have a chance. He was not a man who knew how to surrender. So he stood, looked at Kim-nari, and called out once more, asking for just one more round. But suddenly, before the round even started, Se-jun began to have a nosebleed. Seeing this, Ryuk asked how long he had been in the demon realm. Se-jun answered that it had been 9 days. Ryuk explained that with his current rank, staying any longer would kill him from mana corruption, and that he should return immediately. Se-jun wanted to stay, but he knew he had no choice. Ryuk then complimented him, saying he had the potential to reach A rank if he worked hard. At first, Se-jun did not believe him, telling Ryuk that he had failed the A rank test 6 years in a row. In reality, failing 3 years in succession usually meant there was no chance of improvement. But Ryuk assured him that his mana had not yet fully matured, and he should not give up. Hearing this, Se-jun nearly cried. Ryuk added that before returning he should purify his mana properly. Se-jun had no words but gratitude, thanking Ryuk and Kim-nari again and again, promising that he would give his all and asking them to watch over him. Ryuk also decided to help raise Se-jun up to A rank. As the scene shifted, the group was getting ready to return to the real world. Se-jun wondered if they needed anything besides ramen itself, but Ryuk told him it was enough for now. Se-jun prepared to leave and promised to return to the demon realm soon. As he stepped through the portal, Kim-nari told him to take care, and in return he told her to train well, promising to beat her the next time. Then suddenly, he remembered his wig and asked Ryuk if he had seen it. Ryuk denied it, saying he hadn't. Se-jun wondered where it had gone, but decided to check for it after returning. Meanwhile, Birdie wore a serious expression. Ryuk asked what he was thinking. Birdie explained that if Se-jun were to betray them, it would be dangerous, since he could bring other hunters back to capture Kim-nari. Ryuk reminded him that he could read memories if he wished, and he had already confirmed that Se-jun's desire to grow stronger was real, and his baldness genuine. Knowing the man's sincerity, Ryuk believed Se-jun was worth training. Kim-nari, still puzzled, finally asked Ryuk if he could really understand whatever Birdie was saying. Ryuk realized he had never mentioned it, and explained that he could indeed understand Birdie. He even told her that he had built the storage shelf with Birdie's advice, which was why it looked so neat. Still, Kim thought the place was a little too dark. Ryuk transformed his hand and cut a section of the wall to make a window. But just then, he saw a laser cutting through the wood on the other side. Kim-nari had already created her own window with Birdie's help. With the place brighter, she said she liked it. Rayuk smiled and complimented her. He also explained that if Kim liked having a window, they would need a light source for the night. She asked how they would manage that, and Rayuk told her about a material called luminous glow stones, which gave off light in the dark. If they gathered a few and hung them from the ceiling, it would brighten the whole room. Birdie was shocked and asked if Rayuk even knew where to find them. Rayuk simply smiled, saying there were some in the volcanic region. Birdie warned that the volcanic region was one of the most dangerous places for hunters and also his own hometown. While saying this, Birdie looked sad. Rayuk wondered why returning home gave him such a long face. Suddenly, Kim Nari grabbed Birdie's cheeks, saying his voice sounded strange and asking if something was bothering him. Birdie, choking, realized how sharp she was to catch on so quickly. Rayuk explained that Birdie was worried about the danger of the volcanic region, so Rayuk would go alone while the others stayed behind. But Kim refused, saying she was no longer afraid of fire and wanted to go with him. Rayuk laughed, surprised at how quickly she had overcome her fear. He then asked Birdie if he was prepared to come too. With a resolute look, Birdie said he had things he needed to do in his hometown, so he would go as well. Rayuk nodded and began preparing his powers, saying it was decided, but they would first need special gear for the volcanic area. Meanwhile, in the mandra fields, a wig was thrown around playfully by the mandras. The scene then shifted to the fiery volcanic region, where eruptions shook the land, and a huge monster slowly emerged from the lava, roaring into the air. The volcanic region was one of the top 3 most avoided places in the demon world by hunters. Volcanic ash constantly filled the air, tearing at their skin, while concentrated toxic gases and dense demonic energy made breathing nearly impossible. It was such a dangerous place that almost nothing about it was known in the human world. Birdie explained all this as they moved, but he was left in shock when he noticed Kim stepping directly into the lava, kicking it as if it were water and laughing like it was fun. Rayuk also realized that Kim was literally playing with fire. Birdie knew she was originally a mechanical being, so it was somewhat normal for her, but what unsettled him was how Rayuk could also withstand the deadly atmosphere without issue. When Birdie asked about it, Rayuk smiled slightly and revealed that he was actually a Chimera hunter. Birdie had already suspected as much, but Chimera hunters usually didn't look human. Rayuk explained that he too had once been different, but after regenerating, he had taken on a human appearance again. Then he turned the question back to Birdie, asking if he was really comfortable staying with them, since Birdie was a monster and hunters would normally dislike his presence. Meanwhile, Kim nearly burned her clothes before stopping, acting as though nothing had happened. Birdie replied that it wasn't so bad being with them. In fact, it was fun being able to talk to someone, and Rayuk and Kim didn't seem like bad people. Rayuk smiled, relieved by his words. Just then, Kim climbed out of the lava and noticed Rayuk talking with Birdie again, so she asked if they were having another secret conversation. Rayuk explained that Birdie was simply curious about him. Kim smiled and told Birdie that they were all natives of the demon world, just like him. But Birdie knew that, among the 3, he was the only true native. As they continued walking, Birdie explained that luminous glow stones were usually found near lava vents. Soon after, Rayuk spotted some near a crater and realized they were close. Kim, on the other hand, ran toward a cliff where lava was flowing and stood on top, eager to see more. Rayuk also noticed many luminous glow stones scattered around, but he also saw fire toads fighting within the smoke. The creatures were vibrant orange with rocky textures, but Rayuk noticed one of them seemed to be crying. Kim pointed out another one hidden in the smoke. Birdie explained that the female had died while carrying eggs on her back. Female fire toads carried their eggs that way during breeding season, and only females had the sunken back to hold them. Without her, the eggs would not survive, as the crater's temperature was far too high. That was why the surviving fire toad seemed so distressed. Kim grew emotional after seeing it, while Rayuk thought for a moment and told her to wait. He jumped down toward the creatures, and Kim wondered where he was going. As the fire toad noticed him, it gurgled angrily. Birdie warned Rayuk that the creature was extremely sensitive at the moment and might think he was a threat. The toad quickly lashed out with flames, but Rayuk calmly reached out and tapped its head with a finger. He released a small dose of paralysis toxin from a Neca cobra, explaining that it would not harm the creature since fire toads were immune to toxins. It would only immobilize it briefly. Kim shouted in worry, but Ryak reassured her he was fine since he carried fire toad cells within himself. Assessing the situation, Ryak knew nothing could be done for the dead female, but the surviving one still had a chance. As the paralyzed toad lay still, Ryak carefully placed the abandoned eggs onto its back, telling it to hold on until they hatched. Soon after, the toad recovered and turned toward the resting female, almost as if to say goodbye. Then it leapt high into the air, landing heavily some distance away. Kim was stunned as it turned to look at her one last time before moving away, leaving them all in silence. The fire toad began hopping away. As it moved, Kim realized the creature had looked back at them, and it almost seemed like it was thanking them. Ryak, however, thought that maybe the toad had only been looking once more at the lifeless body of its mate, and that was probably all it was. Ryak then called out to Kim, telling her to come down quickly because they needed to gather the luminous glow stones and return home without wasting any more time. Kim became excited, deciding to dig the stones out quickly so they could head back. She began plucking luminous stones from the cracks, admiring how pretty they were. Ryak reminded her to be careful, warning that she could get hurt if one slipped and fell. Meanwhile, Birdie was struggling, unable to pry even a single stone free because of their size. After finally managing to pull out just one, he was already exhausted and felt bad about himself. Ryak noticed his fatigue and asked if he was all right. Birdie thought to himself that once, when he was bigger, he could have tossed and played with these stones easily, and if he had not shrunk, it would have been different. But Ryak told him he didn't need to help with mining. Instead, he should just focus on the errands he needed to handle in the volcanic region. Ryak also mentioned that Birdie had brought gifts since he would be meeting his friends. Birdie immediately became flustered, squawking at Ryak and asking what kind of friends a monster could even have since he never planned to meet them. He insisted the gifts were only something to leave behind, but Ryak noticed his shyness and suggested that maybe Birdie missed his own kind. After all, intelligent monsters were different from the usual ones. Birdie quickly denied it, explaining that he wasn't missing them, only regretting that he had left without saying goodbye. He thought about how gaining intelligence had its good points, but also many downsides. In the land of one-eyed monkeys, he would have felt less lonely if he had never learned language. Because of that, he had left the group and lived alone. Perhaps his kind didn't even know he was gone, since they never had any sense of companionship or comradeship to begin with. Even so, Birdie grew frustrated while trying to pull out another luminous stone. Kim encouraged him cheerfully, and finally one stone came loose from the cracks, but with it came a sharp cracking sound. Kim turned toward the noise and realized it wasn't just rocks breaking, it was an egg. She saw that it was a monster egg, though she couldn't tell what species it belonged to. The shell was already broken at the top, and after looking closer, she thought maybe the crack had been caused when Birdie's stone hit it. Ryak explained that normally, the baby inside should break the shell on its own, since that was how they grew healthy and strong. Kim wondered aloud what they should do, then finally declared that they should take the egg with them. If they left it here, it would only end up roasted. Birdie was stunned by this logic and disagreed with her decision, but Ryak remembered there was a perfect spot nearby that could serve as a nest. Since he was also curious about what was inside, he thought they had no choice and agreed to take it. Kim immediately volunteered to carry the egg, but Birdie was against it. He asked Ryak if he was serious, pointing out that he had never seen an egg like this before. What if something dangerous hatched from it and Kim was put in danger? But Ryak only smiled and told him not to worry, promising that nothing bad would happen as long as he was there. Birdie finally relented, saying that if it was Ryak himself making the decision, then it would be fine. After deciding to take the egg, Ryak told them they would mine a few more luminous glow stones and then return home quickly. Once the work was finished, the scene shifted. Ryak, Kim, and Birdie arrived back home, only to find Se-jun waiting for them. He looked at the three, wondering where they had been and why Ryak had returned so soon. Instead of pressing him, Se-jun simply stepped forward and offered to carry Ryak's luggage. Ryak handed it over but warned him it was heavy. Se-jun, confident in his strength, still found the bag impossible to lift and wondered what on earth Ryak had been carrying to make it so heavy. Looking closer, Ryak noticed Se-jun's face was damaged and wondered what had happened to him. Meanwhile, back in the volcanic area, a giant packet of ramen had been left behind by Birdie as a gift. His monster friends were eating and dancing around it, completely absorbed in the flavor. As the scene shifted, Ryuk wanted to know from Se-jun what had happened to his face and if he had gotten into a fight. Ryuk had never thought of him as the type who would end up beaten, yet according to Se-jun, he often got hit by Kim back in the demon realm. Without giving a proper answer, Se-jun quickly ran off, calling out that he was hungry and urging Ryuk to hurry with the meal. The focus then moved to Ryuk, who was busy carving luminous stones. Kim came over and asked him what he was working on. Ryuk explained that he was making fluorescent lights by carving alumina stones, adding that if they were to be used for a ceiling, it would be nice to make them look pretty. Kim suddenly realized something and told him he was really smart, not only because he understood what he was doing, but also because he explained it clearly. On top of that, she said, he was kind-hearted, almost like a father figure. Ryuk smiled at her words and asked if her father was still doing well in the coconut tribe, reminding her of the lies she had told before. Kim nodded quickly, agreeing that her father was fine. Time passed, and by sunset the air grew warm enough that Birdie felt as though his body was melting, though not as much as it had in the volcanic region. Just then, he was surrounded by strange figures with glowing red eyes, blocking out the setting sun. They were none other than the Mandras, who attacked him while he slept, using their new formation technique called the Mandrake Triple Fusion Rolling Splash. The attack, however, was ridiculous, bouncing harmlessly off Birdie's squishy stomach. He woke up, confused about what had just happened, while the Mandras celebrated what they believed was a successful strike. Kim, watching from the side, wondered why the Mandras were even picking a fight. Perhaps, she thought, it was because Birdie had wandered into their territory. Before anyone could dwell further, a voice called out. It was Se-jun, thanking them for waiting as he arrived with a new dish. He had prepared a delicacy called inarizushi, a sweet and sour treat popular with children. The dish looked tasty, cut open to reveal meat and rice filling inside a crunchy shell. Though simple, it looked quite presentable. Birdie complimented Se-jun, saying it looked decent even if he didn't fully understand what it was, and Se-jun encouraged everyone to dig in. But before they could eat, Ryuk grew serious. He asked Se-jun again what had really happened to his face. The scene shifted once more, revealing the truth. Se-jun explained that when he went to the Hunter Association to apply for the screening test, he had run into some A-ranked hunters. They mocked him for trying for the 7th time, and when he fought back, he was beaten down. Kim didn't seem to care much, asking only if there was more food. Se-jun admitted he felt miserable, bullied for being a B-rank who kept trying despite constant failure. The bullies even taunted him, saying his pride had fallen off along with his hair, that had been the final blow. Ryuk, who had never realized this, had always assumed Se-jun simply preferred a buzz cut. Now he felt guilty for asking about it at all. Wanting to change things, Ryuk asked Se-jun when his next promotion test would be. Se-jun said it was scheduled for next month, maybe within 60 days. Hearing that, Ryuk stood up and declared that they would begin special training for him starting immediately. Se-jun couldn't believe it at first, but quickly promised to work as hard as he could. Ryuk then announced that Se-jun would take over dishwashing from Kim and would also need to wash the lumina stones they had collected, since they were covered in volcanic ash. Se-jun was confused. This sounded more like errands than training, but Ryuk told him bluntly that if he didn't want to do it, he could just remain a B-rank for the rest of his life. With that, Ryuk asked Kim if she wanted to go fishing, and as soon as she agreed, she ran off with excitement. Left behind, Se-jun felt downhearted, wondering if this was all a joke. Still, he tried to stay optimistic, thinking maybe Ryuk truly had a plan. So even though it was hard work, he grabbed the bag of lumina stones and headed toward the lake. As he walked, he reminded himself that while people thought of him as a natural-born genius, he had only reached B-rank through sheer effort. He was someone who trusted until the end, who kept trying even after 6 failures, and who built everything on diligence and perseverance. At the lake, Kim grew bored as no fish came to her bait. Instead, all the fish were drawn toward Se-jun, who was busy washing dishes. Suddenly, Se-jun cried out for Ryuk's help. Water-type monsters were attacking, and because his attribute was their opposite, they were hurting him badly. Ryuk sighed in frustration, realizing how high-maintenance Se-jun could be. He approached and asked why Se-jun wasn't using his mana to protect himself. Se-jun admitted he was still practicing the technique and couldn't maintain it properly. Ryuk then pulled a luminous stone from the bag and told him to hold it. The moment Se-jun did, dark demonic energy poured out, making his hand go numb until he dropped it. He explained that he couldn't put any strength into his arm. Ryuk explained that sometimes luminous stones contained condensed magic, and since the magic of the demon realm was primordial and unrefined, it had to be pushed out using refined mana. Ryuk assured him that he already had enough mana within his body. He was just clumsy at handling it. So Ryuk tapped into Se-jun's energy and opened some of his mana pathways, telling him to follow the new flow and concentrate while lifting the stone again. Se-jun gave it another try, putting all his focus into circulating his mana. At last, he managed to lift the stone, though it took every bit of energy he had. Relieved, Se-jun realized the dishwashing and stone cleaning were all part of Ryuk's training plan. Excited, he happily accepted his role, promising to keep circulating mana while he worked. He even told Ryuk to call on him if he needed help, claiming he was quite domestic. That night, Se-jun slept peacefully after his training, dreaming of the day he would finally become an A-rank. Birdie, however, couldn't sleep. He had already napped earlier while the others fished. Instead, he sat quietly, keeping the egg in his nest warm so it would grow healthy. It was then he noticed Kim wake up. Covered in a strange red miasma, she silently stepped outside. Birdie tilted his head, wondering where the little girl was going so late at night. It was a dark night when Kim Nari looked at her dress. It was completely dirty, and she felt sad seeing it, wondering why her clothes kept getting dirty. Since Ryuk had given them to her, she didn't want to throw them away. She thought it was fine and decided that washing would make them clean again. Behind her were Birdie and Ryuk. As the camera moved closer, we saw that Ryuk was still oblivious, wondering why Kim Nari was washing clothes in the middle of the night. Birdie immediately snapped at him, saying he was clueless. As Kim Nari was a girl and had no clothes to change into, it was obvious she wanted to clean them. Ryuk realized that for him it didn't matter what he wore, but for Kim Nari everything was different. Near the lake, Kim Nari was happy because the stains were finally gone. Ryuk knew that as the girl was still a kid, she needed other things, and maybe he had been too careless. But Kim Nari was already happy because now, after washing, her clothes were stainless and looked perfect. She was surprised to see both Birdie and Ryuk coming towards her, trying to act nonchalant. Ryuk started talking about how nice the weather felt. Kim Nari asked Ryuk what he was doing near the lake, and he lied, telling her he was just walking Birdie out, asking if she was out for a walk too. Kim Nari decided to play along, nervously walking around so they would believe her. Then Ryuk told the girl to hold on a second and started tying long, strong leaves like a belt while adding a flower. After that, Kim Nari's dress looked similar to Ryuk, and she found it really pretty because it resembled his. The boy even gave her the Sathya flowers that were his favorite. Suddenly, something started rustling in the bushes. Hearing that, Kim Nari became scared and came closer to Ryuk, wondering what the noise was. Ryuk analyzed the area and just smiled, telling the girl not to worry because it was only a bug. We saw that it was a steel grasshopper, a B-ranked monster. The sudden sound scared Kim Nari, but Ryuk asked if she needed anything like clothes or shoes. The girl was already happy because Ryuk had given her a dress and she really liked it. Ryuk was moved by this talk and told the girl it was good to hear. As the scene shifted, we moved near District 30 in the slums of the human world. Ryuk appeared out of a portal, thinking that even when Kim Nari said she was fine, making her wear just one set of clothes that didn't even fit was wrong. Birdie had even scolded him for it. Meanwhile, the other pedestrians wondered why the young man was barefoot and what was going on with his clothes. At first, Ryuk thought he would take Kim Nari along and let her choose the dresses, but with her condition, the human world was still too much, and she had once had a tracker on her which could still be activated in a grim chance. Still, Ryuk found it funny coming all the way back to the slums just for some clothes. He tried to remember something because he had seen a clothing shop there once, wondering if it had closed down. Suddenly, someone came from behind and grabbed his shirt, asking if he was looking for a clothing shop. When he turned around, he saw a boy completely dirty and wearing tattered clothes asking Ryuk for 10,000 so he could take him to the best shop. The boy thought Ryuk wasn't from around there and was ready to lead him to a cheap and good place. Ryak told the boy he would pay once he got change because he didn't have small bills right now. But the boy thought Ryak was broke, a hunter without even $10. The boy assumed Ryak must be a rookie who went to the demon realm and got stripped clean. The boy asked Ryak if he had money for clothes, and when Ryak nodded, the boy told him to follow, explaining that normally he took payment first but would make an exception just for him. The boy turned around and started walking while Ryak thanked him. We came to know the boy's name was Bong, and Ryak also introduced himself. Bong said he'd just call him Big Brother because he was a senior. As they were walking around, Ryak noticed petrol cars going through the slums, which had really changed the situation. Bong suddenly asked Ryak if he had been awakened for long because he had come out of a gate with no gear at all. Bong thought maybe Ryak had brought some equipment and some punks must have taken it all, and he told Ryak not to be down because everyone went through that phase at first. Ryak just smiled, telling Bong that he knew a lot for only being a kid. Hearing that, Bong started shouting that he wasn't a kid, that he just hadn't grown because of malnutrition, and that he was already 17. Ryak didn't care much and turned to look at something else. Bong told him not to go near District 13 because the place always had a bad reputation, but recently the space gang from District 11 had expanded there, and even the cops had given up. So they never went near District 13 to save themselves. The place where Ryak was standing was District 12. He wondered about what the space gang was and whether the orphanage back in District 13 was still standing. As the scene shifted, we came to a small shop with a board reading 1+1, as they were offering to buy one and get one free only for 20,000. It was run by a beautiful lady who wasn't so beautiful anymore because she was worn down, contemplating her life choices and wondering if she had done well by opening a clothing store in the slums. The situation was so bad that young couples couldn't even afford kids anymore, and her shop mainly contained children's clothes. She thought that maybe she should change businesses, but suddenly someone came inside. It was Bong and Ryak, and the lady was named Park. The boy waved to her and called her madam, which made her furious as she scolded Bong for calling her madam when she hadn't even been married yet. Ryak didn't care about any of this. He was just looking around, wondering which clothes he should buy. Meanwhile, Bong explained the situation, that Ryak needed some clothes and that he was a hunter. Hearing this, the lady became even more furious, calling Bong over and grabbing his cheeks while scolding him for constantly dragging broke hunters there. By doing that, he was being of no use to her. Even when the boy couldn't speak properly, he still blurted out some words about how he was supposed to know whether a hunter was broke or not. Park turned toward Ryak, telling Bong to look at him and wonder if he had any money. Meanwhile, we saw that Ryak was just hovering through the children's section, while Bong thought that even if Ryak was broke, at least he was handsome. Now Bong was furious too, explaining to the lady that she was the one who had said that if he saw any pitiful hunters who reminded her of her dead brother, then he should bring them. Park interjected, telling Bong that that was only for charity and only once or twice, and if they kept it up they would be out on the street because the store was not profitable. We came to know that Bong had been helped by the lady when he was hungry and had no money. Hearing that, Park just told Bong to go and wash up. But suddenly Ryak called out to the lady, telling her that he would like to buy some clothes. We saw that Ryak took out a 10 million bill and gave it to the lady, asking if he could get some good clothes for the money he had. The lady's eyes started gleaming as she saw the check of 10 million, not able to believe it. She had thought Ryak wouldn't get anything in the world with so much money. She immediately changed her expression and personality, welcoming Ryak instantly into the shop. While Bong got some snacks and cold drinks for the customer, Park kept on announcing that they had clothes from adult fashion to kids. Ryak explained that he needed preschool girls, clothes and maybe some for himself too, and some shoes as well, because he was barefoot. The lady smiled widely while explaining to him that children's fashion was their speciality, so they should start with this year's spring and summer collection. She started showing Ryak some laced clothes, telling him that they were must-haves and comfy sets for a lot of activities, and telling him that if it was pink, he should just grab it. She went on, and soon a long bill was given to Ryak. On the other hand, Park was crying because she had taken a path that was always worth taking. Her whole shop was sold out. She wasn't able to sell any more and was worried because she was out of stock. There were over 100 pieces, and the lady was ready to have the clothes shipped, but Ryuk told her there was no need because he wanted to carry them himself. After the shopping was done, Ryuk also gave a new set of clothes and 100,000 to Bong to take, along with asking the boy for one more favor. Bong was shocked, wondering what was happening. For Ryuk, trying new clothes was actually a nice feeling. They came near an inn, and Bong told Ryuk that it was clean and safe right by the police station. Ryuk told him to wait and went inside, while Bong thought something was weird, because no matter how much money anyone had, why would someone pay him 100,000 for guiding and also buy him new clothes? Bong started thinking about traffickers who leave kids with money these days, wondering if he should run. But deep down he wondered if Ryuk was really a good guy, just like Madam Park. Just then Ryuk came out of the inn, agreeing with whatever Bong had said, telling him that the owner was nice and the place was clean. He immediately grabbed some keys and gave them to Bong, telling him to live inside the room because he had been living on the streets for too long. He explained that he had already paid 1 year's worth of rent up front, so Bong should stay there from then on. As the meals were covered too, Bong should not skip them. After doing all this, Ryuk was just going to leave. Bong straight up told Ryuk that he knew if he went in, he was getting kidnapped, but Ryuk told him that was not possible because Bong was the one who had brought them there and there was no prior knowledge. Then the boy wondered what the catch was because they had just met today, and Bong was already tearing up because he had free clothes, even a room, along with some money too. So Bong wondered why Ryuk was doing this. Ryuk just turned around and looked at Bong once again, telling him that Bong reminded him of his own past because he used to live like him once too. Even though it was a long time ago, Bong should take care of himself because they were going to meet again. As the scene shifted, we saw that Ryuk went back into the demon realm once again, and both Kim Nari and Se-jun came running towards him. We saw that Se-jun was naked from top to bottom, so he covered himself with a blanket, while Kim Nari wondered where Ryuk had gone without saying. The boy explained that he had been out shopping and had brought gifts for Kim Nari. She couldn't believe that she was getting a gift, and Birdie was also shocked at how many clothes he had brought. Se-jun was actually shocked too, realizing that there were none for him because the shopping was done solely for Kim Nari, and the effect was visible because she was really happy with the clothes she got. They were pretty ones too. Ryuk calmly told the girl that if she liked something, she should try it on, and as soon as she got permission, she started trying them out right away. But inside the house, the egg was already cracking and something was trying to come out of it. As the scene shifted, Ryuk was folding all the clothes he had brought back. He realized that once he started folding, it somehow relaxed him. Meanwhile, both Birdie and Ryuk were watching Kim Nari trying on the new outfits, surprised to see how pretty the dresses looked on the little girl. She seemed almost newborn in her excitement, never having had clothes of her own before and still figuring out how to wear them. It turned into a small, funny sequence as she tried one outfit after another, acting like a ghost swirling around the room because she couldn't decide which one to pick. Ryuk was happy to see her so hyped up, and even Birdie couldn't deny that Kim Nari looked really cute. Finally, Kim Nari announced that she had chosen her favorite outfit. As we got a closer look, we saw that the hoodie had a little chick stitched in the middle of it. It looked just like Birdie, and that's why she liked it so much. Birdie was shocked, wondering if the chick was supposed to be him. Ryuk only smiled and told her it was a good pick, wondering if the girl would try putting the rest away by herself. She was so excited that she was ready to do any work he asked her to. Birdie, though, had a serious concern about what Ryuk was going to do with so many clothes because there was no space to store them. Ryuk admitted that he had been thinking of expanding the house and adding a dressing room with a walk-in closet. Birdie realized that meant cutting down more trees, but Ryuk told him to relax. He had someone else in mind for chopping wood now. He looked out toward the forest and called out to Se-jun, asking if he was up for some special training. Suddenly, a burst of energy came toward them. It was the shiny head of none other than Se-jun himself, who loudly announced that he was always ready for special training no matter what. He explained that he had even brought Ryuk's training gear. Ryuk wondered what he meant by that, but Se-jun believed the leather outfit Ryuk wore every day was actually some kind of training uniform. The leather was drenched in an intense poison, and Se-jun had once touched it by mistake, nearly dying but somehow surviving. He thought this must be the secret behind Ryuk's daily strength, training in such armor, and his respect for Ryuk only grew stronger. He vowed to work even harder following Ryuk's lead. In reality, Ryuk simply couldn't be bothered to wash the leather properly, but seeing an opportunity, he immediately told Se-jun that he should wear the armor instead. This shocked Se-jun from head to toe. He wondered what was going on and why he was suddenly the target. Ryuk reasoned that the leather would make a solid training uniform and that his own training was already done, so Se-jun should wear it and chop some wood while Birdie showed him which trees to pick. Se-jun squirmed, trying to tell Ryuk that he would die if he wore this armor, and on top of that, why they suddenly needed wood at all. Before Ryuk could answer, Kim Nari shouted from inside the house, calling him because the egg was acting weird. The scene shifted as all three of them, along with Birdie, gathered around the egg as it shook violently. Ryuk judged from its movements that it was about to hatch. Kim Nari was shocked, never having seen anything like this before, while Se-jun wondered if it wasn't some kind of disaster-class monster. Kim Nari insisted that whatever was inside must be cute, and they started bickering over who was right. Then some eggshells dropped and a pair of eyes peeked from inside. Kim Nari was curious while Se-jun nearly fainted, realizing that the egg was hatching. Sharp claws began tearing through the shell along with a long leg. Se-jun panicked as he saw thick scales and a tongue snapping out in rage, wondering what kind of monster this was. But then it was revealed that the creature wasn't menacing at all, it was trying to chirp. Kim Nari instantly knew the creature was adorable, while Se-jun couldn't decide whether it was a chick, a snake, or something else entirely. The little creature's leg was so powerful that it jumped out of the egg immediately and grabbed the bald head of Se-jun without hesitation, which resulted in a scream that would have woken everyone up if it had been night. The scene shifted again to later, where Se-jun was finally training while Birdie slapped his shiny bald head with a stick to keep the momentum going, telling him they had a mountain of work to do. Se-jun, not able to understand Birdie at all, wondered why the creature on his head felt like it was scolding him over and over again. Meanwhile, the poison seeping from the leather jacket was so strong that Se-jun could barely breathe, his mind spinning at the thought of how Ryuk managed to wear something like that around the clock. Ryuk, oblivious to the suffering outside, had finally finished folding all the clothes he had brought back, realizing with a faint sense of surprise that it wasn't just a fluke. Folding garments really did relax him and give him a moment of calm. Kim Nari's voice rang out from the other room, calling to Ryuk that the little monster was eating bread and behaving gently, almost obediently. Ryuk realized at once that it must have been because the creature recognized Kim Nari as the one who had saved it. Still, one serious question remained between them. What should they call it? Kim Nari tilted her head, thinking aloud that since it was snake-like and still small, they should name it Sasa. But as soon as that name left her lips, the little snake darted off, its eyes gleaming as though the name had triggered something, and both Ryuk and Kim Nari stared, wondering where it was going. Kim Nari ran after Sasa, and the two of them ended up playing together, or at least that's how it looked to Birdie. Ryuk noticed too that Kim Nari had already grown fond of the new family member. Yet more importantly, he wondered if Sasa was an actual species. He had never seen any monster like this before. Birdie, usually full of commentary, was also at a loss. Finally, he warned Ryuk in a low tone that if Sasa had really come from the volcanic region, they would need to watch the mandras carefully. Ryuk frowned, asking why, and Birdie explained that monsters from volcanic regions had an opposite affinity to plant monsters. Plants were scarce in their habitat, so these beasts would devour any they could find, especially ones with strong demonic energy. That warning proved right almost immediately. Sasa had started heading straight for the mandra fields, and Birdie predicted it would try to dig up and eat the mandras as soon as it got the chance. In other words, Sasa might be the mandra's natural enemy. When Ryuk and the others reached the field, they saw it, Sasa and the mandras facing off, eyes gleaming with a strange malice as their defensive instincts kicked in. Kim Nari wanted to intervene, but Ryuk held up a hand and said it might be better to let them settle their pecking order here and now. This was the demon realm after all, and both sides were still young. They weren't dangerous enough yet for the fight to turn lethal. A bizarre cowboy-style standoff began between Sasa and the mandras, each side starring before the first strike. The mandras had formed their defensive pattern, the longest one standing at the front. Ryuk could only admit that Birdie had been right all along. As soon as Sasa darted toward the smallest mandra, the largest one lunged, blocking the attack with practiced ease. It was the mandra's triangle formation, defense first, then counter. The second mandra swung its stick in a coordinated strike, but Sasa caught it neatly with its tail and blocked the blow. Birdie shouted for it not to drop its guard yet, but before Sasa could react, the smallest mandra sprang from behind with a special attack and punched Sasa clean away. One small punch was enough to make the little monster cry. It had never been hurt before. Chimera saw Sasa's shock and realized this was its first time being struck by anything. Tears in its eyes, the creature turned and ran, while the mandras swayed proudly, happy to have defended themselves. Ryuk announced with a half-smile that the mandras had won this round. Even though the fight was short, it had been epic to watch. Birdie, too, thought it was a good match. Se-jun, still catching his breath, wondered aloud if they should head back. But Birdie immediately started slapping the man's bald head with a stick, telling him to get up because training wasn't over yet. As the scene shifted, the camera of the world seemed to pull back, revealing the open, vast sky and a massive ocean beneath it. High above, something was flying, a creature with a human body but the head of a bird, wide vampire-like wings holding its silhouette aloft against the clouds. As the scene shifted, the new dressing room was slowly but surely taking shape. Birdie hovered nearby, wings flicking as he smacked Se-jun's bald head with a stick every time the man slowed down, barking at him to work faster. Chimera knelt on the planks, carefully applying a layer of green glue to each piece of wood so that the panels would hold. Sasa coiled near the doorway, watching its master's busy hands with flickering eyes. Ryuk, meanwhile, moved back and forth between piles of folded clothes and the half-finished room, stacking garments neatly on the new shelves. By the time the sun dipped behind the jagged horizon, the entire day had slipped away. 2 full days passed before Se-jun finally flung the poisoned leather jacket aside, his body sagging with exhaustion. His training was over at last. He had worked for 2 days without sleep, and it had been pure hell. He muttered to himself that he should demand guaranteed breaks, but he also knew that training under Ryuk always required sacrifices. Even so, he looked at the newly built room, crude and a little haunted-looking perhaps, but exactly as Ryuk had wanted it, and wondered if it was finally acceptable to use. Ryuk came to stand beside him, arms crossed, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He told Se-jun he had done better than expected. Se-jun blinked, not sure what Ryuk meant by that praise, but before he could ask, Chimera spoke up, saying the dressing room smelled like flowers. At first he thought she was imagining it, but once she had mentioned it, both men realized they too were enjoying the sweet fragrance drifting from the new room. The whole place smelled of lavender. Se-jun closed his eyes and let it wash over him. After 2 sleepless days, the scent was almost dizzying in its calm. Chimera tilted her head and wondered aloud why it smelled like flowers. Birdie proudly explained that he had helped pick aromatic wood for the shelves, so the clothes would always carry a pleasant scent. The mandras were in heaven over it too, their little leaves trembling with pleasure. Sasa was curled up asleep, clearly enjoying the smell in its dreams. Se-jun only then realized the snake's name was Sasa, and Chimera beamed as she said Ryuk had come up with it. Ryuk said he was still open to changing it if someone had a better idea. Se-jun chuckled and suggested calling it Snake Chick because it looked half snake, half chicken. Ryuk wrinkled his nose at that, and Chimera, as usual, ignored both of them and simply called the creature Pia, after the sound it made. Ryuk still didn't think that fit either and finally turned to Birdie for a last suggestion. Birdie, without a trace of irony, said the monster should be named the Grand Footsteps in the Drawer. Ryuk just stared at him and asked what his real name was. Birdie puffed his chest and explained that his true name was Rocky Mountain Horseshoe because that represented his identity. At that moment, Ryuk realized all 3 of them were hopeless at naming things. He decided to keep Sasa, especially since the snake seemed to like it, and the others were already used to it. Birdie suddenly asked Ryuk what the next plan was now that the house expansion was done. Ryuk straightened up, his expression shifting. He told them that on his way back from the human world he'd had an idea. Back then, alone, he'd never had time to think about it, but now things were different. He was thinking of building a sturdy fence around the property so that even if he were away, no one could simply wander in. Sejun looked at the darkened forest surrounding the home and wondered aloud if anyone would even dare come near it as it was. But Ryuk didn't want to take chances. An S-rank monster could appear, and there were always hunters who might come searching for Kim Nari or for him. Birdie nodded thoughtfully and said he knew exactly what they would need, something strong and dense with demonic energy. He suggested the coastal region, where a yellowish quartz harder than black stone could be found. If Ryuk built the fence from that and set luminous stones at the base, the barrier would be both strong and beautiful. At night, Birdie added, their house would glow like a campsite. Ryuk imagined it for a moment, then agreed. Kim Nari clapped her hands in excitement while Birdie remained neutral. Sejun, on the other hand, stared at Ryuk as though he'd lost his mind, demanding if they even knew what kind of place the coastal region was. He felt a sudden warm trickle from his nose and realized his stay in the demon realm had already pushed him too far. Still, it was perfect timing for him. He slumped a little and began acting like a weak child, telling Ryuk he needed to go back and drain some of his demonic energy or it would become fatal. Ryuk accepted this calmly and told Sejun he should stay behind and take care of the mandras if they were late. Sejun nodded but warned Ryuk to be careful in the coastal region. It was dangerous, practically off-limits to anyone of A rank or below, and worst of all, 2 disaster-class monsters ruled the entire area. Ryuk did not catch the hushed speculation behind him as the others tried to make sense of what they were facing. Sejun, calmer than the rest, explained that these creatures had once been Chimera hunters who had escaped the laboratory ages ago. Their faces had warped into avian shapes, but their bodies had stubbornly remained human. Along the coast, another unit of adventurers caught sight of the same bird-headed monster. Shock rippled through their ranks as they realized the creature was within their sector. Orders snapped out to ready the tracker, and one impatient fighter channeled his energy into a glowing ring before hurling it at the hybrid. For a moment it seemed the strike had landed, but when the dust cleared, the monster stood unharmed, sprinting across the sand. Or so it appeared. Disaster-class beings were rarely running away, and their brief sense of victory gave way to doubt. Perhaps the rumors about its power were false, they thought, and this one was weaker than reported. They debated whether to attack again, but the leader cautioned patience. Better to wait until the creature retreated to its lair and then strike by surprise. The tracker had already attached. Yet the attacker could not stop wondering why, even after 60 years, these failed experiments still lived and still looked half-human. One of the oldest among them answered grimly that failures could not be predicted. Chimera hunters had been humanity's greatest achievement and its deepest disgrace. Such mistakes must be erased, and today was the day to erase this one. The fighter called to the leader, unsettled by a new realization. The creature was not fleeing at all, but accelerating straight toward them. The leader barked for an emergency barrier, but before the incantations were finished, the hawk-like hybrid was already upon them. A translucent shield flared into being at the last second, yet the wind streaming from the monster's charge smashed it like paper. One strike shattered their defense, and in that instant they knew they had misjudged. Disaster-class hybrids were not quarry to be handled lightly. Panic edged the leader's voice as he shouted at the Chimera hunter, ordering it to halt. Then another voice rolled across the shore, familiar and commanding. Kim Nari had arrived, calling out for the hybrid not to dare bully the weak. The bird-headed creature stopped mid-lunge, recognizing something in her presence. It realized that Kim Nari too bore the mark of a chimera. She dropped to the ground, and behind her Andrew came into view. The hawk halted and landed as well, claws digging into the sand. Kim Nari explained to Ryuk that an uncle who looked like a sparrow had been harassing people. Ryuk, eyes narrowing, wondered if it was instead a sparrow wearing the body of a man. The adventurers grew increasingly flustered. Their scanners had begun to pick up the signal of a machine creature nearby. The leader frowned at the readings, sensing trouble. Unbeknownst to them, Kim Nari herself was also carrying a tracker, complicating matters further. Stranger still, the hawk hybrid seemed to recognize Ryuk and began descending toward him. Ryuk asked quietly if the creature remembered who he was, revealing that they had once been roommates in the lab. What number had it been? Ryuk could hardly believe the bird monster was still alive to stand before him. The Chimera hunter recoiled in shock, while the surrounding adventurers now looked at Ryuk with suspicion. The leader signaled for retreat, thinking to regroup later. But Ryuk knew retreat would only worsen the situation for both sides. At the same moment, the hawk was smiling, a predatory, knowing smile. It had never forgotten Ryuk's scent. In that instant, its identity clicked into place. This was subject number 33, one who might forget everything else but not the smell of the boy who had once shared the same cell. The hybrid's memories of the Chimera cell fusion drug from the TDA laboratory burned bright. At last, the hawk realized who stood before it. The boy once designated number 17 himself. The scene shifts to 66 years ago in the forest near the TDA lab, where we see that some people were actually chasing some runaways, which included the bird experiment number 33 and his sister, who had been running away from the TDA lab after many experiments. We come to know that the little girl was actually having a high fever which was coming from a seizure, from the side effects done by the lab. As number 33 was running away, he wondered if he had made the right choice by taking his little sister with him. He knew that even if the lab scientists had finished him, it would have been better to leave his sister Gia inside the lab. We see that number 33 was crying while thinking that if only he had turned into a real bird, then Gia could feel that his wings were really warm and that she was really fine. So the bird should actually just focus on running. As the scene shifts, we see that number 33 told Gia to hold on a bit longer because he thought that once they were out of this forest, someone would definitely help them. The bird-human hybrid was running with full force, but suddenly he encountered another boy, who was none other than our boy Ryuk, who was a little boy called number 17 back then. Bayam wondered about what 17 was doing there, but our boy explained that he had overheard at the lab that number 33's side effects were so bad that he was scheduled for disposal. So he had already run to the forest so that he could warn number 33 about it. Bayam could not believe that the weirdo 17 could be kind at the worst time. Number 17 knew that even if they escaped the lab, the detonation spell would definitely kill them if they didn't return in 3 days. But as Bayam's sister Gia was not on the disposal list yet, it would have been better to get suppressants from the lab and live one more day for her. But hearing that, Bayam became angry, telling Ryuk that he would not get it since he did not have any side effects till now, so he would not know what it was like for someone who was getting side effects. Bayam remembered the constant seizures and headaches that he had, which were getting even worse. It was like his head was going to explode, and he was not able to bear it. Gia suggested to Bayam that they should just run away because she just wanted to live like before, even if it was only for one more day. The scene shifts back, and we see that Bayam put Gia down onto a tree and asked Ryuk if it is the length of the life that matters or the way that someone lives it. Suddenly his uniform tore down, and some tiny little wings came out of it, while Bayam told Ryuk that he wanted to live free even for one day, and for that he was going to do anything that was possible. He told Ryuk to quit talking nonsense and fight him instead. But number 17 was as nonchalant as he could be, suddenly grabbing a stone and breaking it, forming a portal. It was a gate to the demon realm, and Bayam was shocked, wondering about how 17 had got a gate stone when they were not allowed. It is then that we come to know that if a chimera crosses into the demon realm, then one of two things will happen. The human cells will be poisoned by the demonic energy, or the monster cells will absorb it and awaken with the mutation intensifying even more. The scene shifts back as we see Ryuk telling Bayam that if he really meant whatever he said, then going to the demon realm was actually a better choice. Because even if they could not handle the demonic energy and turned into monsters, they would still live free until then. And the lab's detonation spell would also not get triggered if they were in the demon realm, which was a completely different dimension. But Bayam wondered if a human could even survive inside, because theoretically they needed enough mana to shield their body and mind from the demonic energy. And even when it would not be easy with his power now, nobody knew about what the future holds. Bayam was shocked, wondering about why Ryuk was helping them, even when it was of no benefit to him. Meanwhile, we see that the lab workers were actually shocked to see that a gate was opening right in the middle of nowhere, and they spotted Bayam and his sister. On the other hand, Bayam told Ryuk that he was going away, but suddenly he realized something. Before going inside, he told our boy that they had been roommates for 4 years and didn't even know each other's names. The birdie introduced himself as Bayam, wondering about what 17's name was. It was then that the boy just smiled, telling the birdie that his name was actually Ryuk. The scene shifts back to the present once again, and we see that Ryuk was asking the adventurers who were near the cliff about what his name was. But something had happened, and a kind of powder was floating in the air, manipulating the minds of the adventurers and their leaders, who were unable to remember the name of our boy. Ryuk tested again and again, asking them about why they had come there and what they had seen, but the leader constantly told our boy that they didn't know about it. After the whole check-in was complete, Ryuk just told the adventurers that they should go inside the gate and get back to reality, along with forgetting everything that had happened in the demon realm. Both Sasha and Bayam were looking at what was happening. Meanwhile, Bayam realized that Ryuk had wiped the adventurers' memories with the dust of oblivion, along with hypnosis. It was explained that Ryuk also had some oblivion herb cells inside his body, and about 3 hours of memory before and after would be completely vanished without any retrace. Bayam was still shocked that Ryuk had not got any side effects after so many implantations, being planted with all kinds of things, from plants to monsters. But still, Ryuk told Bayam that a lot had happened after he left. In the present, we see that Ryuk still remembered number 33's name, and Bayam was surprised by this gesture. But suddenly it was Kim Nari who was pulling the shirt of our boy, slightly asking him if he was really friends with the Sparrow uncle. Ryuk laughed and told the girl that the uncle was from the Sparrow tribe. Meanwhile, 33 wondered about how and why he looked like a sparrow to the child when he was clearly an eagle hybrid. Meanwhile, Ryuk mockingly asked Kim Nari if the Sparrow and the Coconut tribes were allies, and if it was not so right now, still continuing to tell lies. Kim Nari agreed that they were allies. Meanwhile, Bayam was actually surprised, wondering about what coconuts and allies meant, because he did not know what they were talking about. Meanwhile, Kim Nari suddenly came in front of the eagle saying sorry and still calling him Sparrow Uncle, apologizing because she had thought at first that he was bad. Suddenly, growling noises came from the stomach of the little child, as she told Ryuk that they were hungry. Ryuk asked Bayam if they had got any food and where his house actually was. Meanwhile, the man was confused, wondering if the child was Ryuk's daughter, or if he was raising a kid for someone, or worse, it was some kind of role play. As the scene shifts, we get to the coastal region beach where there was a large structure made out of branches and trunks of trees. Kim Nari was surprised by such a huge house, wondering if it was really the Sparrow uncle's house, because it looked just like a nest. But still, Ryuk realized that it was not bad at all. Suddenly, we see that Bayam came near them with a plate full of multiple food items. Not sure about how it tasted, but still willing to let them try, he had cooked some grilled clams with Demon Realm plant butternut, which was actually butter-flavored, along with a Demon Realm plant called red moss, which had a savory paste flavor. Kim Nari was shocked after looking at the dish, realizing that the clams were huge, while Ryuk was pretty impressed by how good the cooking actually was. It was the birdie himself who started eating, and he was immediately sent to heaven as he was blushing intensely, realizing that the freshness was as fresh as anything could be. He wondered if he had swallowed the wave, or if the wave had swallowed him instead. The clam that Kim Nari was eating was as if it was dancing with every chewy bite, and the whole dish was being complemented with red moss, which was making everything better. Even Bayam told them that red moss worked with everything that they had. He bowed down in front of them, getting happy that his guests had liked the food, telling them to eat slow. But suddenly something happened, and the eagle's face turned pale instantly, as it seemed like he was in a lot of pain. Ryuk noticed it but did not say anything about it. Suddenly, Kim Nari started causing a commotion, telling the Sparrow uncle that she wanted even more to eat. The eagle nervously told the kid that he was out of ingredients today and wondered about what he should do. But hearing that it was such a small problem, Kim Nari wanted to know that if she caught some clams, would the Sparrow uncle be making the dish again. Bayam was shocked, realizing that even when he could make the dish multiple times, it was really dangerous for a kid to catch clams when the ocean was full of monsters. But both the birdie, along with Kim Nari and Sasha, were actually completely fine with it. deciding that they would get 10 clams so they could eat even more. Kim Nari was sure that they at least needed these many clams so they could be full. Meanwhile, we see that both Ryuk and Bayam started talking, while the eagle was not able to believe that he had survived thanks to the immortal cells that had already been planted inside him. And after that, he had a pretty good life. The eagle wondered if Ryuk was planning revenge on the TDA lab, but the boy was enjoying the scenery instead, telling Bayam that even when he thought about it, sometimes it was not so bad. And as life was not that bad right now, Ryuk decided that he would take his time. The boy reverted the question, asking the man instead if he wanted revenge. But the eagle explained that even when Ryuk's spells disappeared after he revived, the eagle still had the detonation spell inside of him, and it would explode the second he got back to the human world. Ryuk decided to change the topic, still serious while asking Bayam if he could properly control his wings right now, and if it was so, then why he could not change his head back. It was then revealed that Bayam could change back to his human form, but still he would not, because his sister's face had actually been changed forever after the mutation. And if he looked normal and she did not, she would only feel worse about it. But suddenly Ryuk wanted to ask even more questions, wondering if the eagle already knew or not that he had only got a month left to live at most. Bayam was surprised, but still, he had already figured it out. Ryuk could notice as it had brought back many old times. The eagle was remembering the flashbacks while telling Ryuk that it was rough when they first came inside the demon realm. Still, he fought like crazy, building mana just to live so that he and his sister could survive. And then one day his mana and the demonic energy balanced out, and both of them stayed at peace for a long while. But not long ago, Jia's mana hole twisted for some reason, and her demonic energy went wild. In the desperation of saving his sister, the eagle had hurt his own mana hole, forcing it down. Bayam was barely holding on, but Jia still ate fruit with sleeping poison and just slept all day, putting herself in suspension to slow the rampage instead. Ryuk realized that all the eagle needed was a mandra, because even after damaging their mana hole, making medicine with mandra roots would heal someone right up. Ryuk wondered if the bird brain did not know about it at all. As the scene shifts inside the nest, we see that a half-bitten apple was thrown out of the nest, and someone inside was actually screaming in pain and agony. And it was none other than Jia, who had been mutated pretty badly, hurting herself as her demonic cells were completely possessed by it. As the scene shifts, we see that Bayam was shocked that he and his sister could really live longer and his mana hole disease could be cured. He wondered about how it was done, and Ryuk knew that this reaction was justified, because of course the birdhead did not know about it since they didn't even teach alchemy at the lab until the experiments turned 15. According to Ryuk, all they needed was mana hole purified water brewed from the fine roots of a mandra. As the eagle did not know what mandras were, Ryuk explained that they were plant-type monsters who were set to shriek when pulled from the earth, and even when its fine roots may look like nothing, they were the core of its life force, feeding on demonic energy underground and even sprouting into new bodies to reproduce. That's why the water purified from the roots of mandra worked so well to repair mana holes. Ryuk was thanking God that they had been raising mandras in their garden, promising the eagle that he was definitely going to bring it to him. Bayam was shocked about why Ryuk was going to such lengths for someone like him, but Ryuk ignored it, explaining that they would be needing an alchemist to prepare the purified water. And as Bayam could not set foot in the human world with the detonation curse on him, Ryuk decided that he would go to the human world instead, and in exchange, Bayam would just have to take care of Kim Nari and the birdie, along with Sasha, who had been playing in the coastal region. The eagle hybrid immediately agreed to whatever Ryuk said, because getting healed was a really big thing for him. But Ryuk realized that the alchemist who would brew the medicine would want something in return, and both Ryuk and Bayam did not have enough money to offer. But suddenly we see that the bird had a bag full of goodies and put it onto the sand of the coast. Ryuk wondered about what it was, and Bayam explained that he packed it with stuff that hunters always bring in the demon realm, wondering if this was really enough. Ryuk realized that it was more than enough and smiled while looking at the sky, while still taking out a gate stone and promising the bird that he'd be back really soon. As the scene shifts, We come back to the human realm, and we see that both Ryuk and the guide Kid Bong were actually walking in the streets of the slums. While Bong asked Ryuk if he was looking for an alchemy-type awakened individual, we come to know that Bong was now a full-time guide who was really in proper clothing and presenting himself quite properly. Ryuk told him that he needed someone skilled for the job. Bong explained that the Alchemist Association opened a branch in the slums last year, and they would probably find someone there. But Ryuk was noticing something else. He noticed sandbags which were woven by Bong, as he wondered about why the boy was wearing them on his arms and legs. The boy explained that he was doing some stamina training because he wanted to get as strong as Ryuk himself. Ryuk wondered about what happened with Bong, that he was ready to do so. Bong explained that as he saw Ryuk marching into the demon realm with nothing but the clothes on his back, that meant the boy was insanely strong, and Bong wanted to be like that too. So now, as he had money, he was eating a ton and working out non-stop. Ryuk smiled happily as he saw Bong's good condition, and he seemed taller, guessing that it might have been a growth spurt which had been hindered by malnutrition. As the scene shifts, we come to the Alchemist Association near the Slum District 13 branch, and Bong explained that the new manager of the place, Mr. Kim, had just arrived, and he was really scared and a nice person too. But just when they decided to enter, they noticed that Mr. Kim was actually outside the building, and he was kind of scared, talking to someone on the phone, telling him that he had not missed a single interest payment in over 20 years. Bong realized that Mr. Kim had got another call from a loan shark. Ryuk wondered about what it was, and the boy explained that around the slum area private loans were the norm. And Mr. Kim had worked at the Gold City branch for 20 years, but got demoted and sent here, while also getting his salary slashed into half. Ryuk straight up gave the answer that maybe if he was demoted, then the man must have done something wrong. But Bong was sad as he explained that back in Gold City, one of Mr. Kim's higher-ups was siphoning the slum support funds, and he was infamous for stealing credit, lining his pockets with dirty tricks. For that, Manager Kim reported him, got on his bad side, and then got thrown out from his well-paid job. After this explanation, we see that Manager Kim turned around and was getting back to the association building, while he looked at Bong with surprise and happiness, wondering about what the boy was doing near the building. Even the man also noticed that he had grown up a bit. Bong did all the formalities and informed Mr. Kim that Ryuk needed an alchemist for something. On the other hand, our boy also noticed that when high-ranking alchemists were so rare, he did not expect a person like Mr. Kim in the neighborhood, who was actually having a really refined aura. The boy looked at the duo while they were smiling and talking with each other. But suddenly Bong informed Ryuk that he should get back to training, and Mr. Kim wondered if they should head in and talk instead. As the scene shifts to the association building, we see that a young man was sitting near the reception while thinking that he had been stuck with a rotten boss, which was a nightmare for him. The best that the receptionist could hope for was a D-rank hunter buying a low-tier potion, and there were no kind of achievements that he could get in this building, and a promotion was out of reach nonetheless. But suddenly the doors opened with the bells chiming, and the manager along with our boy entered the building, shocking the receptionist and the assistant manager named Park. He was ordered politely by the manager to grab them a drink, but Ryuk denied, telling Manager Kim that he had no time, so he decided to get straight into it. Ryuk explained that he already knew that Mr. Kim was an A+ ranked alchemist, and he could brew mana whole purified water with mandra, so he should do it because Ryuk needed it immediately. Mr. Kim was shocked, wondering about how he got mandra roots in the slums, which was ridiculous. And even worse than that, how did Ryuk even know about the manager's rank? The man informed Ryuk that he could make it, but since they didn't have such rare ingredients in the association building, it was impossible. But just then Ryuk asked him if this would do, and the man was shocked from his head to toe as his core was shaking while Ryuk opened some mandra roots. The man inspected it and realized that it was having dense demonic energy, and no doubt it was a live mandra root and was no fake. It was so fresh that it looked like it had just been freshly dug up. Even the manager had never seen one that was this pristine, even after being an alchemist. But Ryuk did not stop, opening the bag given to him by the Eagle Head, telling the manager that for the production fee they would pay with coastal region specialties, and that they should appraise it without much problem. For the manager, it was even more shocking for an adventurer to come back alive from the coastal region, and that too with some coastal region specialties, which were glittering with quality again and again. The manager knew that an S-ranked black pearl was something that not even the headquarters had, and on the other hand, Ryuk had brought them 3 of it, like it was mere child's play, along with a demon red giant clam which was still alive and not dead like the others. And last, but not least, was the red moss, which was key for top-grade potions. It had only just been discovered by humans and was ultra-rare. Ryuk wondered if this much was actually enough for the fee. The manager shockingly told Ryuk that it was not only enough, but this could buy the whole building without much effort. The assistant manager told Manager Kim that he needed to fetch the appraisal machine from the lab because for items like these, a high-quality machine appraisal was mandatory. The assistant manager told them that he would be right back and started going into the lab, while Ryuk suddenly had his interest piqued as he saw a bottle of water in which something was kept. We come to know that it was a dried-up mandra. Ryuk was shocked because Manager Kim had told him that they did not have mandra, and for this, the man explained that the one kept in the bottle was actually dead. It was 10 years old, and all its medical powers were actually gone. We come to know that Mr. Kim was fascinated with mandras, so he kept it as a relic instead of throwing it away. But Ryuk informed him that the one in the bottle was actually alive. Ryuk started giving it complete mana so that it could be revived, and the mandra was actually starting to breathe as oxygen bubbles formed inside the water. Ryuk showed it to Mr. Kim, telling him that it was indeed alive and was responding whenever it was fed mana. Mr. Kim was shocked to the core once again as he was making distorted faces, realizing that its demonic energy had run dry, so it was hanging on in suspended life. Ryuk decided to give it a bit more mana, but Mr. Kim was shocked because it should have been impossible. He had tried multiple times and given the mandra plenty of mana before. But the conversation was suddenly interrupted by the opening of a door with a bang. And we come to know that an old-looking geezer with a golden-clipped tie entered the room, telling Manager Kim that it had been a while. We come to know that this man was Executive Ahan, who was surveying the vicinity, joking around that this small office should not be an office at all, joking about the condition that Manager Kim had after messing with him. The man was surprised, wondering about what brought the executive to the association building. But Executive Ahan told Manager Kim that he got word that some extraordinary item showed up in the slums. We come to know that the snake who told the executive brat about it was none other than the assistant manager Park, who had already tipped off the executive for his promotion. The manager frustratingly told Ahan that he moved really fast, and the executive mocked Mr. Kim, telling him that unlike the manager, he had capable subordinates who were twins, their movement being awakened, so Executive Ahan was able to travel at double speed. Now the executive was shocked that Ryuk was the one who brought all these treasures into the slums, and the boy wondered about what the big deal was. The old man introduced himself as Executive Jeong Ahan of Gold City Branch, and he offered to Ryuk that he should come with him to Gold City, and he would be treated properly. But as Ryuk was having a decent talk with Manager Kim, it was really irritating for him. But suddenly something jogged his memory, but Ryuk ignored it, while Executive Ahan told him that he would not get a fair price in the slums, and instead he should sign an exclusive contract with him, with bonuses up front and taxes all covered. Ryuk was not interested in anything, and suddenly asked the old man if there was a mole beside his nose. The old man wondered about why Ryuk was asking something so insignificant, but Ryuk asked the executive once again if he had any relation to a man named Ahan Bok Diok. The executive started laughing devilishly with a distorted face while wondering about how Ryuk knew about his grandfather, explaining that he was the grandson of the great Gold Peace Prize laureate expert Ahan Bok Diok. But Ryuk just smiled while telling the man that the genes were truly vile. We come to know that when 17 was small, he also encountered a wild human who told him that they were nothing but subhuman wretches whining for their mothers. And now that they were chimeras, he wondered if their parents should also be sent into the demon realm along with them. The wild man was holding a whip in one of his hands and was laughing with a contorted grin, and he had the same mole near his nose as he told 17 that he should go and cry to his new parents for salvation. Ryuk was unable to contain his anger, throwing off his demonic energy here and there, which was even enough to bring Executive Ahan down to his knees. He was crawling in mere instants, as Ryuk asked him if he was just like his grandfather, who liked crushing people with power and grabbing whatever his eyes fell upon. Executive Ahan wondered about what the slum boy was spouting, as it was utter nonsense. But Ryuk was not playing around anymore, and he was finally serious, telling the executive to answer carefully about whether the TDA lab still existed and was making illegal chimeras. Ryuk questioned angrily and shouted for a better answer to his question. He questioned about the TDA Research Institute and its existence, if it still existed. Executive Ahan, scared, became humbled and nervous after hearing the name of TDA. He answered while bowing on his knees that he had never heard that name before. Ryuk questioned again, asking if he didn't know about the illegal Chimera Research Institute where his grandfather worked as a senior researcher. The question even shocked Manager Kim, who was hiding behind the table listening to the conversation. He was shocked to learn that the Gold Peace Prize winner scientist had worked at an illegal research institute. Executive Ahan, trembling, said not to insult the deceased, because his grandfather had devoted his life to research and to training future generations at the university. After retirement, he had donated his entire fortune to the families of Gate victims and received the Gold Peace Prize for that contribution. Ryuk, in agony and with an evil grin, thought to himself that after killing so many kids behind the scenes, it seemed that the old man has repented in front. Ryuk then stated that he had thought Ahan's grandfather might live longer since he was an awakener, but he died earlier than expected. Ahan, trembling in fear, was shocked even more when Ryuk questioned if it was because of the aftereffects from falling out of the window. This shocked Ahan even more, because that incident was not known to the public, and he couldn't understand how Ryuk knew about it. Old memories flooded Ryuk's mind, taking him back to the past when the experiment was still ongoing. In those memories, it was revealed how Ryuk had pushed the old grandfather out of the window, the man who had kidnapped children, turned them into chimeras, and even threatened to throw them into the gates. Overcome with anger and agony, Ryuk had pushed him out of the window. When the memories faded, Ryuk growled in anger, declaring that he would give Ahan one chance to return and investigate his grandfather and the TDA Research Institute. Ryuk was determined to find the executive again when the time came in the future. Ryuk thought to himself how unexpected it was to meet the old man's grandson here. His backstory began when he was only 9 years old, the age when he first underwent chimera biological experiments. After that, the process of monsterization began in his 20s. However, his memories from that time were hazy, as if he had lived in a world where civilization had vanished. Without a sense of self or reason, he had likely only followed commands and instincts. This made Ryuk wonder if so much time had passed that the TDA Research Institute's name had already changed several times. His thoughts were interrupted when Manager Kim entered the room, carrying purified mana whole water made from mandra. Apologizing for the wait, he presented bright green bottles to Ryuk. Ryuk expressed his praise, saying that, as expected of an A+ grade alchemist, Manager Kim was fast as ever. He then asked if it took around 30 minutes to make. Manager Kim replied that the materials were so good that the process was easy. He added that he would prepare the remaining materials right away while making calculations on his device. Ryuk, observing him, thought about how skilled and well-mannered Manager Kim was. After a brief pause, Ryuk stated that he would hand over all the remaining combination materials and suggested forming a personal contract with Manager Kim. The contract would last for 10 years, during which Ryuk would provide the materials, and Manager Kim would only need to handle the combinations properly. The proposal left Manager Kim stunned. The idea that such valuable materials were being entrusted to him, along with an exclusive contract, filled him with mixed emotions. He asked Ryuk in disbelief if selling those materials could easily buy a building, yet Ryak was still offering them to him under a contract. After hearing all the good things Ryak said, Manager Kim was deeply moved. Though he tried to hide his emotions, tears silently fell from his eyes. Seeing this, Ryak wondered why Manager Kim was crying, but to his surprise, Kim explained that he was from the slums. Memories flooded Manager Kim's mind. Back in his childhood, his parents had taken out heavy loans. From that moment, he had promised himself that he would repay all the money for their sake, no matter how hard his life became. Yet, despite all his efforts, he had remained stuck in the same place for years. Now, after hearing Ryak's offer, he was so moved that he asked how he could ever repay Ryak's kindness. Meanwhile, Ryak was quietly thinking about how Kim was already worrying about repayment, when nothing had even begun yet. Manager Kim then said that he would take care of Ryak from now on, and sincerely thanked him from the bottom of his heart. But Ryak knew that there would be quite a few things to discuss with Manager Kim from now on, and he would have to work even harder after the medicines were made. Ryak decided to return since it was already evening, assuming that nothing serious would have happened while he was away. As the scene shifts, we move to the demon realm, where chaos was unfolding. Jia, completely out of control, had grabbed Bayam by the head and lifted him up, acting like a feral beast. The eagle-headed Bayam regretted his mistake, realizing he should have anticipated that Jia might lose control in her condition. The boy was crying, begging his sister to come back to her senses, but Jia only growled in a demonic tone, slamming him onto the ground and throwing him several meters away, smashing through rocks. Bayam knew he was too late, but suddenly he saw both Kim Nari and Birdie running toward him, asking if he was okay or if he was hurt. Birdie wondered why Bayam was taking all the hits instead of fighting back. Despite everything, Bayam told himself that Ryak shouldn't worry, as his top priority was to keep his promise, protect the girl and Birdie no matter what. He steadied his wings, knowing Ryak had saved them once before, and this time he would return the favor. With tears in his eyes, Bayam dashed toward his sister at high speed, determined to deliver a fatal blow, whispering that in her next life she should live happily. But just before they could collide, a jellyfish-like creature appeared between them and expanded. It was Ryak. He had used monster cells to calm the girl down. Bayam was stunned, unsure what he was seeing, while Ryak looked down, wondering if such a small dose of sleeping poison had really made her faint. Kim Nari cheered in relief that Ryak had returned, while Bayam blinked in confusion at the sight of the jellyfish emerging from Ryak's body. Then he noticed Ryak sitting on top of Jia, using the jellyfish as a cushion. The boy was shocked, while Ryak just sighed, wondering if there was any other way to subdue her without doing this. Bayam wiped his tears and asked Ryak if he had managed to get the medicine. Ryak smiled and replied confidently that, of course, he had gotten it without any trouble. He had brought 2 bottles, one for the boy and one for his sister, and told Bayam to feed it to her quickly. Later that night, a small campfire flickered under the dark sky. The 2 bottles lay empty on the ground, and nearby Jia, Kim Nari, and Birdie were sleeping peacefully. When Jia slowly opened her eyes, she was startled to see a small child sleeping in front of her, wondering if she was dreaming. As she regained her senses, she spotted Bayam and Ryak sitting near the fire. Ryak turned around when he heard her stir, and Jia immediately covered herself, screaming in confusion, asking who he was. The noise woke Kim Nari, who asked sleepily if Sparrow Auntie was awake too. Jia blinked, baffled at being called that, but then her brother smiled in relief and told her to check her mana hole. Jia, still confused, asked about the little kid, and Kim Nari introduced herself cheerfully. As Jia examined herself, she suddenly realized her mana hole was normal again, and her face had returned to normal too. She was overwhelmed, not understanding what had happened or who these people were. Bayam looked surprised that his sister didn't seem to recognize Ryak, since she used to talk about wanting to see him so often. Then Jia froze, staring in disbelief at the boy eating quietly beside the fire. Her eyes widened as she realized it was him, number 17. She kept repeating it in shock while Bayam explained that once again they had been saved by none other than Ryak. Ryak, however, seemed completely indifferent, asking if there was any more red moss left. Birdie told him that was all for today, and Jia, though still processing it all, was now sure. This was definitely Ryak, the boy who had no sense of empathy. Gia took off her mask and smiled softly, thanking Ryuk for saving them once again and giving them another chance at life. But then Kim Nari suddenly noticed something glimmering in the distance and pointed toward the ocean. The water was sparkling with golden light. Gia put her mask back on and told the girl it was a sea fairy. Kim Nari asked what that was, and Gia explained that it was originally a seahorse-type monster that lived deep beneath the sea, but she nicknamed it Sea Fairy because it looked like one when it flew through the water. She added that these creatures only came to the surface at night to play and returned home when the sun rose. If they followed the Sea Fairy, they could find yellow glowing quartz. Ryuk's eyes widened as he realized that the real reason they had come to the coastal area was for the quartz. He asked Bayam how long until sunrise, then stood up with a grin, saying it had been a long time since he'd gone swimming. Meanwhile, in a distant laboratory, the scientist with recently regrown hair was staring at a monitor, trying to locate a mechanical creature. His panel reported that around 10 B-rank hunters had spotted it multiple times in the forest area but failed to capture it, and it now seemed to be hiding near the coastal region. Recently, some A-rank hunters who went there returned with memory loss, and even after that, their tracking devices still showed the creature's last known location. Then, a shocking moment. Executive Han called the scientist. As he picked up, Han's furious voice demanded to know whether the scientist had any connection to the TDA Research Institute. The scientist tells Executive Han that he has not heard of the lab, but Han insists that it was an illegal research facility that had been secretly run a long time ago. But the scientist stopped Han midway and explains that the Hanbit Research Lab doesn't perform the kind of experiments Han is talking about. He reminds Han that his grandfather always told him to remain an upright and honest researcher, and that their lab has never been involved in shady dealings. But we all know from the expression that the scientist knows really well about what Han was talking about. After the call ends, the scientist leans back in his chair, lost in thought. He begins to wonder uneasily how Han could possibly know about the illegal lab, something that was supposed to be erased from all records. A moment later, the door to the main office got knocked, and the scientist told the person to come in. We see one of his attendants who rushes into the room with a spark of excitement, announcing that they have finally succeeded in combining liquid metal and mandra, creating a liquid metal mandra. The scientist's face lights up at the news of the success, because the mandra, he knows, are remarkable beings, especially noted for their deep sense of kinship and instinctive loyalty, along with extremely powerful coalescing property of the liquid. He feels glad that he had left a small portion of the liquid metal behind for further testing. Confident in his work, he believes that a chimera combining the metal mandra will track down the mechanical life form faster than any other hunters could. It was built with precision and programmed to sense her unique mana signature. Without hesitation, he orders that the bounty on the mechanical creature be tripled, and that all elite-class hunters be mobilized immediately. No matter what it takes, he must find her. After all, she is his life's masterpiece and the peak of his research. As the scene shifts back in the demon realm, Bayam stands quietly before the vast, shimmering sea, recalling a conversation he once had with Ryuk about the quartz. Ryuk had casually mentioned that he wanted to use it for building his house, which had completely shocked Bayam. He also invited the bird head to his house, pointing out that they even have a good cook. Bayam realizes that Ryuk, despite living in the dangerous demon realm, seems to be enjoying his life more than anyone else. Ryuk then asks Bayam if he would ever like to visit the human world. Bayam admits that he is not particularly curious, yet deep down he wonders how much the world might have changed since he last saw it, and if anything got better. Ryuk then tells him that there might actually be a way to remove the curse from the bird's and his sister's body. Curious, Bayam listens closely as Ryuk explains that he recently met an alchemist named Manager Kim, an exceptionally skilled grade researcher, who also made the mandra water. Ryuk wants to persuade him to study cursed spells and find a cure. He wants the bird to at least have a choice, because there is a big difference between choosing not to go and not being able to go, though he warns Bayam not to get his hopes too high. Overwhelmed by Ryuk's kindness, Bayam starts to tear up. He asks why Ryuk always helps them even though they have never done anything for him in return. Ryuk simply says that watching the siblings reminds him that there might be things more important than survival. Helping the bird head and his sister gives him a strange sense of purpose. He believes that by supporting them, he might finally discover the answer he's been searching for. As we come to the present, we see that Bayam stares into the clear blue sea. The bird head sister suddenly appears in the distance in the sky, waving at him from a distance and throwing a thick rope across the waves. She shouts for him to catch it and pull with full force. Confused but obedient, Bayam grabs the rope and starts pulling with all his might. The rope feels incredibly heavy, but he doesn't give up. After a long effort, he finally drags out a massive net filled with glimmering quartz stones. Bayam is speechless at the sight. He can hardly believe Ryuk and his duo of just a small girl had managed to mine something this large. Nari and Ryuk, both drenched and laughing, had clearly enjoyed swimming in the deep waters while mining the quartz. When they reached the sea fairy's palace beneath the waves, they found it breathtaking. Nari noticed that its walls were shining like golden coral, looking like a yellow palace. Nari smiled and told Ryuk that they should visit the palace again someday when they have more time. But on the coast, because of the sheer amount of quartz they gathered, Bayem wonders aloud how Ryuk plans to transport it all back home in the forest zone. Ryuk scratches his head and admits that he hasn't figured that part out yet. Just then, a massive shadow passes over them, and Ryuk looks up to see a massive parrot-like vulture bird monster flying above. He's puzzled because birds of that kind usually move in flocks, yet this one is flying alone. Nari marvels at the bird's vibrant feathers, saying how beautiful it looks, but Gia quickly warns her that she'll change her mind when it gets closer. Gia explains that these birds grow over 4 meters long and are extremely vicious. Even she and Bayem avoid confronting them. Bayem glances at Ryuk and instantly realizes what's going through his mind. Ryuk smirks and admits it. He had been looking for a way to transport the quartz, and now a flying truck has conveniently appeared. Back at Ryuk's house, Sejun is still training to expand his mana flow, while all the cute mandras were looking at him calmly. Sejun can feel his mana hole steadily growing wider, a sign that his power is increasing. He smiles with satisfaction, believing that his long-time dream of becoming an A-ranked hunter might finally come true. His concentration is suddenly broken when a strange metallic creature, the liquid mandra, appears behind him. Panic sets in as he turns around, but his fear deepens when he spots 3 intimidating A-rank hunters standing right behind the mandra. They instantly recognize Sejun by his bald head and burst into mocking laughter. These were the same hunters who had bullied him during his promotion exam. Sejun feels trapped and helpless, but to his shock, the 3 mandra standing in the garden suddenly take defensive stances, bold and unwavering. The hunters are thrilled, knowing how valuable mandras are on the market. One of them moves closer, trying to deceive one of the creatures. But before he can react, the largest mandra launches a powerful kick that sends the hunter flying several meters away. At that very moment, the bird head and his sister Gia arrive at Ryuk's house, only to sense chaos from a distance. They exchange confused looks, wondering who could be causing trouble this time. Apparently, they had traveled ahead of Ryuk to reach his house first, since the parrot-like bird monster was flying much slower, partly because Ryuk had beaten it half to death while trying to tame it. Looking at the monsters, Sejun wondered why all this was happening all of a sudden, that too when he was alone in the forest area. He thought that both Bayem and Gia must be disaster-level monsters who were living in the coastal area, wondering why they appeared in the forest all of a sudden. Sejun also remembered that both Kim Nari and Ryuk had gone to the coastal area that way, and his face turned pale as he thought maybe something bad had happened to the 2 of them. He thought that he should join forces with the hunters who came into the forest area. But before the man could even do anything or call out to the hunters, they were flying in the sky as they were fighting Gia, who immediately came closer to the Baldy, asking him if he was the chef of Ryuk, because whatever the boy had told them was matching. Because he had a bald head, this much was enough to scare Sejun away as he scrammed through the place, and we come to know that even in his long-haired era, Sejun had 0 female interaction. So even when Gia was a monster, the man was startled. But just then, he realized that the lady had talked about Ryuk and wondered if she happened to know about his brother. It was then that the bird told Sejun that Ryuk was her friend. Hearing that, Sejun was shocked from head to toe, wondering how Ryuk had disaster-level monsters as his friends, and what kind of life he had been living to be friends with these dangerous people. But Bayam immediately asked Seijun about who those hunter guys were, because they didn't seem like customers, and suddenly something clicked inside the mind of the Baldy as he realized that this was a really good opportunity to protect himself. Now the man was smiling with an evil grin on his face, and the adventurers realized that something bad was going to happen to them and were crawling from head to toe. An hour later, we see in the sky that both the bird and her friends landed on the ground with insane speeds, breaking it into pieces. But as the dust and smoke cleared, we see that the parrot-vulture monster had been carrying all the cores that both Ryuk and Kim Nari had collected, along with her cute pets. Ryuk called out to Kim Nari, telling her that home was the best after all. But on the other hand, the parrot-vulture monster was screaming in pain, because it had been through such a long flight with such a heavy load that it was becoming unbearable for him. Ryuk suddenly patted the monster's head, telling it that it did a great job and that it should take a rest. Both Jia and Bayam were shocked that Ryuk was really able to tame the beast, but the bird head was sure that if it was Ryuk, then he could do so. But suddenly, from the feathers of the parrot-vulture monster came rolling the birdie, who was feeling really dizzy as he rolled around because it had been so long since he had flown so high. But as the birdie opened his eyes, he got slammed onto a shoe and wondered about what it was. It was then revealed that it was the 3 A-ranked adventurers who had come into the forest area. Ryuk wondered about what was going on, and the eagle head thought that maybe it was an attempt to steal the mandras, but still something felt off to Ryuk. Even when the eagle hybrid tried to talk, he was hesitating. Jia understood what she had to do and bent down near Kim Nari, telling her that she had heard that the valley was really beautiful and wondering if the kid could show her around her house. Kim Nari was happy as she immediately jumped up and told Jia that there was a beautiful waterfall near their house too, and both of them started going there, while Kim Nari happily told Jia that she would also teach her how to catch fish. Then the eagle head started telling Ryuk that the A-ranked hunters were commissioned by the Hanbit Research Institute, and Ryuk knew that if it was Hanbit, then they might have come because at first Seijun also came looking for the mechanical creature, and he was a reliable source. Even Ryuk had expected that more hunters would come because Kim Nari had a special tracking device attached to her that worked even in the demon realm, and that's why the kid was not free. But still, Ryuk wondered about how these people ended up in the forest area when in actuality, Ryuk was with Kim Nari in the coastal area till now, and they had just returned. Even the eagle head had not thought about it enough, but suddenly he remembered something and took out a metallic little thing, showing it to Ryuk, telling him that they must have been to the forest area because of this guy. We come to know that this was the same mutated mandra that the Research Institute had created, and even Ryuk realized that they had synthesized liquid metal with mandras. He wondered if they made it to track Kim Nari. Even the eagle head had heard that liquid metals attract each other, so that's why this was made. But coming to the forest area, the mandra was not drawn by Kim Nari and was instead drawn by his kind, as it found healthy mandras near Ryuk's house, and that's why they came there. But Bayam had heard that the adventurers were planning to go to the coastal area next because they were not going to easily give up on Kim Nari. Ryuk knew that they needed to think about a countermeasure, but suddenly he noticed that all the mandras came running towards him. As he wondered about what was going on, all those mandras were excited as they gestured to Ryuk, trying to tell him that even if the mandra was a chimera, he was still their kin, and the mandras wanted to take care of him. Ryuk started going towards the mandras and gave them the liquid metal one for good company, but the little mandra was still cutely screaming at Ryuk, as if telling him that something else was left. Ryuk realized that the small, cute creature was right, but he wondered about how they came to know about what was in his pocket. As the boy took out another shriveled mandra from his pocket, Bayam asked Ryuk about how such a scrawny guy came inside his pocket. We see that both the new mandras were entered into the triplet family, and Ryuk explained to the eagle head that the shriveled mandra was being raised by an alchemist and that he had agreed to take care of him. We come to the flashback where we see that the alchemist himself had given it to Ryuk, having faith in the boy that the mandra would really be better off with him than with the alchemist himself. Even when he was crying while giving it, he told Ryuk to take good care of him, and the boy nervously agreed. Here, we see that all the other mandras immediately started digging holes for their new buddies and told them to come inside and enjoy the nutritious demonic energy which was filled in the farmland. As they got inside, both the new mandras were in heaven, and even the eagle head noticed that, telling Ryuk that these guys looked like serious perverts. But for Ryuk, it was fortunate that they were not hostile, knowing that they would fit perfectly in the environment. But suddenly, Ryuk wondered about where Seijin had gone because he should be back by now. Just then, Jia called out to Ryuk from above, and as the boy turned around, he saw that the lady had come back with both Kim Nari and Seijin in her hands. Seijin was really crying and becoming happy by the fact that Ryuk had come back, getting ready to hug him, but he was slapped by Ryuk immediately as the boy wondered about what was wrong with Seijin's condition. Jia told Ryuk that Seijin was getting bitten by fish all alone in the water, and the man explained that since Ryuk was so easily handling the fish, he thought he should also try to treat them but ended up being attacked instead. Kim Nari continued that the sparrow auntie had saved both of them in style, but Seijin came back to his senses and told all of them that if they waited a little bit, they would have some delicious food to fill their stomachs. But in front of him was a giant creature, and as Seijin noticed it, he started screaming with a pale face, wondering if he was food for the parrot monster instead. But Ryuk decided to explain it later because he was hungry and food preparation was necessary. Even Seijin did not mind and started cooking, while Kim Nari wondered about what was on the menu today. But suddenly the girl ran towards the liquid metal chimera because she was being attracted to it, and as soon as she tapped onto the chimera's leaf, something was being communicated to her, and she was instantly sad. As the scene shifted, we see that it was evening, and it took so much time for the food to finally be complete. Both the eagle head and Jia were shocked to witness what was made for them. It was revealed that it was kimchi curry rice, which was simmered as long as beef bone soup, and it was a culinary dish made by none other than Seijin himself. The man was proud of it, even when it was instead curry and simple kimchi, but he added some delicious salmon and pork and then chopped a variety of vegetables generously. Then Seijin started stirring and did not stop for an hour so the bottom of the broth would not burn, and after that, the delicious food was prepared and was on the table. The siblings knew that the smell was nice, and Ryuk wondered if they should try it now, while Seijin hoped that the food tasted good. As soon as Jia and the bird head ate it, they were straight into heaven, realizing that this was what they called the meeting of East and West. Even when it was spicy, the boy liked it because it was delicious, wondering if there were some Indian spices in the soup, while Ryuk realized that the siblings' reactions were like a comedy skit. But then he also noticed that Kim Nari was not eating at all, wondering why she was not eating and asking the girl, but she just turned around, telling the boy that she did not have an appetite. She suddenly got up and started running, telling Ryuk that she was going to sleep early, and even when the boy understood that maybe the girl was worried about the liquid metal chimera, he did not think that something so grave was going to happen. As both the new mandras were enjoying their stay, the shriveled mandra was suddenly woken up and wondered about what was going on. The scene shifted again to Bayam and Jia as they were really happy, stating that they had really overeaten after a long time. But this much was expected from a professional chef whose cooking was completely different. Jia also thought that she had definitely turned into a pig instead of a bird monster. But suddenly Ryuk got up, asking the siblings if they should make a fence to help with digestion, and the siblings told Ryuk that he should leave the cutting of the stone to them. But suddenly something grave happened, and as Ryuk turned around, he heard a noise and realized that a gate had opened out of the blue. In front of the gate was Kim Nari, who was thinking that if she stayed in the demon realm, then it would be dangerous for the others too. So she, along with the metal mandra, decided that they should go back to where they originally were, not knowing the true powers of Ryuk. On the other hand, the boy was nervous, wondering about what was going on, and we see that Kim Nari was crying while telling her uncle to take care as she was going to enter inside the gate. But we see that Ryuk came to the rescue immediately, calling out the child's name again and again, while she was crying, wondering about what the hell she was going to do. We see that the portal was opened inside the house, and Kim Nari was almost going to leave. But Ryuk asked her if this was not her house, just like she said a few days back hearing. That was like oh damn's water getting out of control. We see that both the siblings Bayam and Jia realized that the kids grew up in an instant. While we see that Kim Nari turned around and hugged our boy while strangling the metallic Chimera Mandra, even Ryuk realized that he cannot afford to get distracted now. But you all can afford to hype the video if you are liking the story so far, as it would help me a lot. As the scene shifts, we see that Kim Nari was out on the dining table with a bowl full of tasty-looking ramen, which she was gulping with her pouted mouth, as her eyes were completely swollen from all the crying. But as she had one bite, she immediately told her Seijun uncle that the ramen had been even tastier than the last time. Seijun just smiled, telling the girl that late-night snacks were best when they have to eat ramen. But as Kim Nari was finishing the whole bowl in an instant, Jia was angry on her, telling her that she was so little and she was already running away, which was not acceptable at all. And if she do that again, she will get scolded by a big sister a lot. Kim Nari immediately agreed that she was wrong and continued eating. But then she realized that it was really spicy, and Seijun came in clutch with a bottle of probiotics milk, slamming it onto the table and telling Kim Nari that if it was really spicy, then she should drink this instead, because his mom also told the man that it tastes the best when things get spicy. Bayam also recognized the milk, as it was something that the research institute gave out occasionally. Seijun ensured everyone to eat as much as they like, because there's more to come. And after the food was finished and Kim Nari was satisfied, Seijun asked Ryuk if he should clear the dishes and take care of the task that Ryuk had assigned to him. Meanwhile, Bayam also stood up, wondering if they should now try cutting some quartz again, because it was getting delayed, and Jia also agreed, twisting her body and stretching it completely. After more than 3 bottles of probiotic milks was finished, Kim Nari suddenly apologized for making Ryuk worry, while drinking one more bottle of milk, and Ryuk apologized to her as well, telling her that what she thought was right, and she did not do anything wrong. But she does not have to worry at all. Ryuk knew that the ones who did wrong were probably those who created the mechanical creature, and was trying to use such a cute child. But then Ryuk returned in the serious mode, asking the girl about her friends from the coconut tribe, and what kind of kids were they. At first, Kim Nari was shocked, wondering about what friends she had. But Ryuk, on the other hand, knew that if he was planning to clean up the Hanbit Research Institute, then he would have to save all the other kids. And Kim Nari might know something about them, but still, as he cannot say it completely out loud, he decided to ask Kim Nari about them in this way, because back in his time, he also had 3 close friends in the institute. After hearing that, Kim Nari started making excuses because she does not really have any coconut tribe or any friends, but Ryuk knew that he does not have to ask specifically about the lab's location, because Seijun would know it anyway. But just then, Ryuk remembered a task that he had assigned to the man, wondering if he was handling it well enough. As the scene shifts, we come to another place where we see that Seijun was smiling with her devilish laugh. While someone was strangling while their mouth was covered, we see that it was the same heir and adventurer that came after Kim Nari, and Seijun immediately removed his mask so he can speak, while being assured that if you told him that he had suppressed the mana of these guys so they cannot use it for a while, it was enough. After putting down the mask, we see that Seijun was slapping the hunter again and again. But the hunter was not so cooperative, immediately telling Seijun to stop so that they can make a deal. The man was startled, wondering about what it was, and the hunter hastily explained that if Seijun would let them go back then in the human world, they will reward the man as much as he asked, because they have got some money that they have saved up, and that kind of money could buy a house in Gold City, which was the most expensive, and in exchange of that, Seijun would just have to let them go. But hearing that, Seijun started tinkering inside his pocket, telling the hunters that even deals would have to make sense to him. We see that inside the pocket was a great deal, because it was a black card issued by banks to rich individuals, and Seijun flashed it in front of the hunter while saying that he was not the type to fall for that kind of pocket chain. Even the hunter knew that this special black card that the bank was issuing was only for the ultra-elite, and someone like Seijun, who they thought was pushover, was actually in possession of this card. But Seijun immediately snapped the hunter's attention, telling him that this was not the most important thing right now, because it turned out that his revenge from the promotion exam hall not long ago ends like this, when everything came back to money. The hunter immediately apologized to the man, telling him that they have made a mistake, but Nepaldi was not going to let it slide, because they have called him bald and shiny head. And whatnot, and still, Sejan refused to give up, but these hunters were actually the real bad guys who were ending it. Famous thugs in the neighborhood doing bad things just for money. Sejan immediately asked the hunters if failing in the promotion exam was a bigger fault, or beating up weak people because they were strong, and then taking their money was way bigger than anything else, which also resulted in the hunters scamming people. It looks like Sejan had many things inside his pocket as he started rummaging around inside once again, taking out 3 golden balls which were having a devilish aura around them. Sejan smiled to compliment the devil inside, and told the hunter that this was the pollen from the forget-me-not flower that Ryak had given him, which was all mashed together. And Sejan had pressed it down so hard, and made such a concentration that he had no idea how strong the effect will be. Only by sniffing the hunters realized that their memories were all over the place, and they were suddenly becoming victims of way brutal crimes that they actually never did due to the medicine's after effect, but the hunter was still not ready to give up. So Sejan decided that he should use the forget-me-not flower ready to finish it once and for all. He forcefully opened the jaw of one hunter, and just when the man started screaming, the scene cut off to the next day. Kim Nari and Birdie were running around while Sasha was perched on Kim Nari's shoulders, the bird thinking that child-rearing was really tiring. At that moment, Ryak and Bayam were talking about how the boy was going to clean up the Hanbit Research Institute, and how he was even taking Sejan with him along with Birdie to make things easier. Ryak wanted Bayam to take care of the house while he was gone, and the eagle assured him that nothing bad would happen. Just then, Ryak was called from behind by none other than Sejan himself, who told him that all the preparations were complete. They noticed that their chef was in a really good mood, and Sejan explained that Ryak had promised to introduce him to an A+ grade alchemist who might be able to solve his problems. Bayam realized how serious Sejan's issue must have been. Meanwhile, Gia was watching all of them, wondering if Ryak was really planning to enter the institute with his real face and wreck everything. She thought that maybe he should at least have a disguise. It didn't seem like a bad idea, but Sejan wondered if they would have to disguise themselves to meet the alchemist too. Just then Gia took off her head mask, looking as beautiful as ever, and told Ryak to take at least the skull with him so it would help as a disguise, because being a wanted man with a real face was never good. Ryak wondered if the mask would even fit him, while Sejan's mind was completely blown as he kept staring at the girl. Meanwhile, Bayam joked that even though his sister's face was small, her head was really big, so if the mask fit her, it would definitely fit Ryak. Sejan's heart started pounding as he blushed, realizing that something strange was happening. He was actually falling in love at first sight. Meanwhile, Bayam was getting beaten up by Gia for his comment, his head being stretched while he screamed. Sejan immediately got down on one knee and told Gia that he had a personality where he acted on whatever came to mind right away. Then, with his most charming face, he asked her about her type. Both Bayam and Ryak spat out the water they were drinking in shock, and even Gia froze for a second, surprised by the sudden question. Ryak and Bayam sat down with some popcorn, saying it had been a while since they'd had such entertainment. Bayam explained that his sister always took every question seriously and would always answer honestly, no matter how strange it was. So Gia thought for a moment and said that, for now, she liked something flashy and something that could dance well. Hearing that, Sejan wondered if she preferred peacocks over humans, and what completely crushed him was when she added that she also liked people with lots of hair, the more the better. The one thing Sejan lacked most was hair. Fueled by new determination, Sejan turned to Ryak with fire in his eyes, saying they had to meet the alchemist as soon as possible. Ryak asked where they were stopping on the way, but Sejan didn't care. Anywhere was fine as long as he could fix his hair problem. The scene then shifted to the real world, where a huge gate had opened, scaring all the humans who saw it. They wondered why a return gate was so massive. Suddenly, a gigantic beak emerged, followed by a colossal monster bird that burst out at incredible speed. Everyone realized it was the parrot vulture, and they quickly decided to report it to the association. For a moment, some thought they saw people riding it, but since that didn't make sense, they focused on reporting first. From above, however, we see 3 people riding the parrot vulture. Sejun asked Ryuk where they were going and why he was bringing such a massive bird with them. People were bound to be shocked. Ryuk simply said that there was no reason to walk when they had a ride. As the camera zoomed in, we see that both Sejun and Birdie were wearing masks, while Ryuk, smiling beneath his skull head, enjoyed the view of the bright sky. He decided that this new ride should be called Blue, to match its color. Sejun kept asking where they were headed, but Ryuk didn't answer. Meanwhile, at the Hanbit Institute, the head scientist was being told that all the hunters sent this time had returned with amnesia and remembered nothing. When he asked about the Tri-King Chimera, he was informed that it had been lost in the demon realm. Furious, the scientist slammed the table repeatedly, scaring his subordinates. He knew that losing the mechanical creature would not only ruin their reputation, but also endanger their government funding, as a shady organization that had invested heavily would not take it lightly. Just then, an assistant approached with something found in one of the hunter's pouches, a small condensed orb, and a note saying that the person would visit the head scientist soon. Seeing this, the scientist screamed in rage, demanding an immediate investigation. But before he could finish shouting, the mirror behind him shattered as the parrot vulture crashed through the wall with a heroic entry. Dust and smoke filled the air as the enormous bird landed clumsily, its left tail feather bent awkwardly. Ryuk thought that they should fix that once this job was done. As the parrot vulture lay unconscious, Sejun and Birdie rolled on the floor, dazed and wondering if they were still alive or had ascended to heaven. Meanwhile, Ryuk calmly asked the terrified employees in the office who among them was the lab director. The scene shifts to a little while ago, just before the raid on the lab, as we see that Ryuk and Sejun, along with the birdie, were flying through the parrot vulture monster. Sejun told Ryuk that the Hanbit lab was actually located halfway up in the mountains, somewhere between the slums and Gold City, which was just a little further away from where they were. But still, Sejun wondered if what they were doing would really be okay, because even when he didn't know, he felt out of the loop. Hanbit was not just any research institute. They had successfully developed mechanical organisms using liquid metal, naming them the liquid metal chimeras. They were also the creators of Kim Nari, who herself was a mechanical organism made of liquid metal. The institute even made it to the media and received awards for their creations, when in truth, it should have been considered a crime. Sejun knew the reality of how Kim Nari had been treated. But he saw that Ryuk wasn't paying attention at all, certain that maybe Ryuk already had a plan. Then Sejun turned and looked at the parrot vulture monster, realizing that its tail feathers looked really different. Ryuk explained that the left side of the monster's tail feathers wouldn't grow, which made him unique. Ryuk had noticed this from the first time he saw the monster. It had been attacked by its own kind because of its tail feathers and was running away because they were different. That was when Ryuk saw the opportunity and saved him. Even the parrot vulture monster seemed happy after being rescued by Ryuk, as if it was thanking him. Sejun, still curious, wondered why the tail feathers not growing back was enough for the monsters to attack one of their own kind. Ryuk explained that parrot vultures were obsessed with beautiful tail feathers, and it was in their instincts that the moment they saw someone different, they would immediately attack. This was why Blue, the parrot vulture monster, had been ostracized from the group. They kept attacking his tail. This made Sejun tear up, as he understood the feeling of wanting to grow something in a place where it would never grow, symbolizing his own fallen hair that had left him bald. Suddenly, Sejun noticed that the building of the Hanbit Research Institute was close, and they were going to reach it in just a few moments. But as Ryuk saw the building, he immediately told Blue, the monster bird, to go straight ahead and not stop until they crashed. Sejun wondered what he meant, but the monster had already picked up full speed. The birdie was terrified, almost ready to throw up from the height, and it felt as though Sejun might be thrown off at any moment. Ryuk yelled at him to hold on tight to the bird, since the monster's uneven tail feathers made it a terrible flyer. It couldn't balance itself at such insane speeds. Even though Sejun knew it was impossible, he still clung to the parrot vulture's feathers for dear life as they crashed straight into the building. We return to the present, where all the scientists were shocked, wondering what in the world was going on. A female scientist recognized what she saw before the crash, a dangerous monster of enormous size. A male scientist with glasses grabbed something nearby for support, realizing he couldn't see a thing through all the dust swirling around. But when he turned to see what he was holding, he immediately wet himself. It was the parrot vulture monster, standing right inside the Hanbit Research Institute. Before anyone could process what was happening, strong spider webs suddenly wrapped around them, tying them all together. It was done by none other than Ryak himself, who had used his monster powers and captured them all. As Sejin got up along with the birdie, he asked Ryak why they had used the back entrance when the main one was perfectly fine and safe. Ryak explained that since the head researcher's office was usually on the top floor, they had to follow this route. Wondering if the head researcher was plotting something, Ryak immediately asked the tied-up scientists if this was indeed the Hanbit Research Institute. The scientists didn't answer, confused about who Ryak actually was. Ryak introduced himself as Kim Nari's guardian, but the scientists didn't seem to understand what he was talking about. This pissed Ryak off, and suddenly he noticed something was wrong. A strange, ominous feeling was spreading through the air, the presence of a chimera. Ryak instantly realized that something was not right. The scene shifts to Gold City, and in the Hunter Association building, where we see that an old man asked a young boy about how his B-ranked exam prep was going on, warning the young man that if he failed, then the old man would kick him out of the house, so he should be aware. We come to know that this young man was named Lee, who was actually a C-class individual, and the old man was a C-ranked hunter too, who was the grandfather of Lee and the head of the Hunter Association. Lee wondered why his grandfather was so hell-bent on him leveling up when he was only in his early 20s, knowing that it was going a bit fast. And more importantly, as Lee was back in the Hunter Association's building office after a long time, he wanted some pocket money from his grandfather. The old man sighed at this behavior of his grandson, telling him that he had been raised with care because he was the old man's only grandson. But the old man was already 84 years old, and it was about time someone took over the position of the head of the Hunter Association. We see that Lee was not at all interested in this, and was sweating all over his face because this conversation actually made him nervous. But the grandpa explained that in his youth, he saw the awakened as they risked their lives to save people, and it was due to this that the old man created the Hunter Association so that he could help them because he wanted to do his part, however small, to protect the world. But the awakened ones of today were no longer ready to take on dangerous jobs, and most of them were only interested in profitable ventures, only running towards money. The old man was not signifying that the hunters should go to their deaths just because they were awakened, and even the Chimera research started in the first place to protect them. But to hire a Chimera hunter, the Hunter Association would have to pay a huge amount of money so that the Chimera Research Institute could run. The experimentations done by the Institute were affecting lives in the poor areas, who were inevitably exposed to danger even when it was all for survival. The old man couldn't help but blame the other hunters because he still couldn't forget about the heroes of the old era who actually saved people, no matter if they were rich or poor. And the old man also believed that a world where life and death were decided by money was wrong, and it was only at times like these that the Hunter Association needed to stand even taller. But everyone only looked at money and coveted the position of the Hunter Association head. The man knew that if Lee would become the association chairman, then he could form a more solid foundation and be righteous because for the old man, it was late, as he had awakened pretty late in his life, and now he was living as a powerless association chairman because his rank was low. But if it was Lee who had awakened at a young age, things could be different. The boy was getting annoyed by all this and was going to snap back at his grandpa. But before that, an assistant came inside the office, telling the head that inside the slums, a giant parrot vulture monster had appeared. Hearing this, both Lee and his grandpa were shocked, wondering how it could happen when there were no naturally occurring gate signals. But the assistant told the chairman with hesitation that all the hunters were being contacted, but no one was ready to step up, and they were actually ignoring all the calls. The head knew that this would happen because the incident happened in a slum, and there were no people who could afford these hunters, So the old man decided to take matters into his own hands as he told the assistant to contact all the Chimera labs near the vicinity of the incident, deciding to go himself. Hearing that, even Lee couldn't contain himself, telling his grandpa that he would also be coming for support. The scene shifts back to the Hanbit Research Institute once again, where we see that Ryuk had binded the head researcher with the spider web, but it was really strange because the man was not speaking at all and was giving off a purple miasma of a chimera. Ryuk knew that something was wrong, and he binded the spider web so tight that the researcher was split in half. This horrified Sejun, but then he noticed that in actuality, the head scientist was a chimera made out of liquid metal. Looking at that, even the birdie was shocked, knowing the true potential of what the liquid metal chimera could do. Even the scientists working in the lab were shocked, knowing that the director had turned himself into a chimera with his disfigured body and ugly face. Ryuk was being challenged by the chimera director, who asked about how Ryuk dared to enter a lab so sacred. The chimera director was ready to even send Ryuk to his death if this was what it meant to protect the secrets. And as Ryuk realized that the chimera was the head of the lab, he started analyzing everything, knowing that this director was also turned into a liquid metal chimera, just like Kim Nari, but he was not completely liquid metal yet. Ryuk realized that maybe the director had done biological experiments on his own body so that he could enhance it all. But suddenly, the birdie told Ryuk something shocking as he communicated to him telepathically, saying that he had succeeded in getting the memories of the Chimera director. As we get into the flashbacks, we see that this director was even more cruel and evil than the previous scientist On, who wanted to succeed more than the deceased scientist. This much was enough to make Ryuk rage in insane anger, as he grabbed the deformed head of the scientist and asked him about how he also dared to kidnap children and do awful experiments on them just for the sake of money and fame.